Chapter 222. Demon Emperor Feng Xiu's gaze was very gentle. He looked too young, only a few years older than Long Haochen. At this moment, he was like an elder brother chatting with Long Haochen. I was really surprised at that time. It was also the first time I felt a threat from you. Unfortunately, at that time, I still didn't know that you were the one chosen by Austin and Griffin, and that you brought them to this world. Only when Abao told me this news and told me that Austin and Griffin had grown to 4 heads, did I know that the one who brought the destruction of our race was actually you. Long Haochen coldly said, "So, you launched the holy war that plunged the world into misery and suffering." Demon Emperor indifferently said, "No matter how unwilling I was to kill you, when your existence threatened the safety of my race, I had to make a choice. The merciful cannot command an army, not to mention that I am the leader of my race. Even if the one with Austin and Griffin was Abao, I would still make the same choice. In order to make you come here, I didn't hesitate to put on a show with Agars. In fact, I already knew that the holy war wouldn't have any result. It would only be a waste of human power. Unfortunately, you are not me, not a leader. You will never understand what to give up and what to choose in order to rule." Long Haochen solemnly said, "If you didn't put on a show, how could we believe it? You used bait that we couldn't refuse to lure us here, and you succeeded. There's no point in talking, do it?" The demon god emperor shook his head and lightly sighed. "Let me finish what I have to say. I don't want to kill you, but I have no choice. I have no choice. I am willing to do one last thing for you. Take your own life. If you die, Austin and Griffin will naturally die in the other world. My goal has been achieved. I will let your companions go so that you can die in peace." "Your Majesty," Agars couldn't help but shout. In Long Haochen's glimmer of dawn demon hunt squad, he wasn't the only outstanding one. In this group of monster hunters there were 2 other favored. In the history of the demons coming to the Holy Demon Continent, almost every favored had given them a great blow. In such a desperate situation where the favored had not fully matured, letting go of these young humans with limitless potential who were filled with endless resentment towards the demon race was tantamount to releasing tigers back into the mountains. "Shut up." Feng Xiu's gaze suddenly turned cold, and an incomparably terrifying aura suddenly erupted from his body, suppressing Agars so much that he couldn't say anything else. At this moment, the heaven-defying demonic dragon emperor's prestige was undeniable. Agar's face turned pale, but he respectfully lowered his head and did not dare to say another word. Feng Xiu glanced at Agars coldly. "No one can question my decision. Your Majesty, please punish me." Agars lowered his head. Feng Xiu waved his hand, no longer paying attention to Agars, and faced Long Haochen again. Although he knew that the demon emperor wouldn't lie, Long Haochen couldn't help but ask, You're telling the truth? You're willing to let go of my companions?" As early as when they discovered that they had fallen into a trap, Long Haochen and his companions were already prepared to die. But at this time, the demon emperor suddenly said that he was willing to let go of his companions. This was already the biggest surprise for him. "I never go back on my words." Feng Xiu slowly closed his eyes and said faintly. Long Haochen wasn't familiar with this demon emperor, but the moon demon and star demon were very familiar with him. Star demon Vasak didn't say anything, but moon demon Agars was secretly surprised because he knew that the demon emperor would only show such an expression when he was extremely conflicted. He had followed the demon emperor for so many years, and such a situation had only happened a few times. But this time, it happened when they were facing an enemy that must be killed. "Boss, we will live and die with you," behind Long Haochen, the members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters said almost in unison. Long Haochen suddenly turned around and said angrily, "Nonsense. Do you think your lives belong to me? Your lives belong to the Alliance and the entire human race as early as the day you became a demon hunter." His body trembled slightly as he looked deeply at each of his companions. Do you still remember what I said to Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi? Only by living can you have a future and take revenge for your companions. If you die, you will lose this opportunity forever. Death isn't scary, but if you follow me like this, I won't forgive you even if I go to hell because you are cowards. In the unseen world, I will always be watching over all of you. I will watch as you return to this place one day, to the heart of Shanghai. If you still recognize me as your leader, don't do anything stupid. I order you, every member of the Light of Dawn, to live well. In the near future, take revenge for me and fight for me. Looking at the persistence in Long Haochen's eyes, which were gradually turning red, the members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters couldn't help but tremble with excitement. Yes, it was easy to die, but it was more difficult to live. No, Kai suddenly screamed hysterically and threw herself into Long Haochen's arms. However, before she could make a sound, Long Haochen's hand quietly squeezed her neck. Kai let out a muffled groan and slowly fell into his arms. 2 streams of tears flowed down Long Haochen's cheeks. In his heart, all the things that happened between him and Kai kept flashing past. He still clearly remembered the first time he had met Kai. When he was just a little girl, he clearly remembered everything that had happened after he had been with Kai. To him, the happiest moment of his life was probably during the preliminary stage of the Monster Hunter's trials. He had been able to send Kai home every day, hold her hand, and walk quietly on the street. However, all of this could never happen again. He knew that he could convince his other teammates to listen to his arrangements, but he couldn't convince Kai. Therefore, he could only let her calm down first. He lowered his head and kissed Kai's forehead gently, then kissed her fair and tender cheeks. At this moment, every member of the Light of Dawn monster hunters could clearly see the strong reluctance in his eyes. Leader! Lin Xian, whose face was already full of tears, shouted. Shut up! Long Haochen shouted. Of course, he knew what Lin Xian wanted to say, but he couldn't let him continue. He had barely managed to get his teammates to suppress their emotions. If they were ignited again, he wasn't sure that everyone would be able to calmly accept the tragedy that was about to happen. Long Haochen didn't look at his teammates again. Instead, he lowered his head and gave the last of his feelings to Kai in his arms. Silly girl, how can I watch you do stupid things? Do you know? I really hope that you will lose your memory again after leaving here. Forget me and forget all the pain. I'm sorry, I can't continue to accompany you until we're old. As he spoke, he slowly took off the forget-me-not ring that had never left his hand. The blue forget-me-not pattern shone with a faint luster under the dark golden light of the Star Demon Tower. Long Haochen put it on Kai's finger and gently kissed her cheek again. He took a step forward and handed her over to Wang Yuan. Raising his head and looking at his teammates again, he saw everyone's tears and the almost dead sorrow in their eyes. Don't be sad. I'm already very happy that you can leave here alive. Remember my words and live well. I will wait for the day when you take revenge for me in another world. My soul will be watching you from the unseen world. I beg of you one last thing. No matter what, don't let Kai rush to avenge me. You must let her live. After she wakes up, even if you knock her out, you can't let her do stupid things. Wang Yuan took Kai and nodded her head vigorously. Even someone as strong as her was already sobbing and couldn't speak at all. Death was easy, but choosing to live was really difficult. How they wanted to die here with Long Haochen. However, they deeply understood that what Long Haochen said was right. They were demon hunters. As early as the day they passed the Monster Hunter's trial, their lives no longer belonged to them, but to the Alliance, to the entire human race. They couldn't just die here. Only they could avenge Long Haochen in the future. Turning around abruptly, Long Haochen didn't dare to look at Kai again. He was afraid that he would no longer be able to suppress the emotions in his heart. Lowering his head, he muttered to himself, I'm sorry. I couldn't protect you and even dragged you to die with me. If we have another life, I'm still willing to merge with your bloodline. You will always be my good brother, for generations to come." After saying this, he suddenly raised his head and shook off the tears on his face. He looked up at Demon Emperor Feng Xiu, who still had his eyes closed and didn't stop him from saying goodbye to his companions. "Your Majesty Demon Emperor, although we are enemies, you are willing to let my companions go. I thank you. However, I have one more request I hope you can agree to." Feng Xiu said calmly, "Speak." Long Houchen's face showed his pride and said loudly, "I am a knight of Knights Templars. I grew up learning the spirit of a knight. As a knight, I couldn't protect my companions. Today I must die here. However, I am a knight. I hope you can give me a dignified death. I don't want to be a coward who kills himself. I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you." It was just a few simple words, but Long Houchen said them forcefully. Star Demon Vasak, who had been calm all this while, couldn't help but show surprise on his face after hearing these words. In such a desperate situation, facing an opponent that he couldn't even fight against, he still had the courage to say such words. They couldn't help but look at Long Houchen in a different light. "Good!" Demon Emperor suddenly shouted. His closed eyes opened again. From his eyes, two bright cold flames shot out as he stared at Long Houchen. In his eyes there was deep sorrow and deep admiration. There was now a hint of determination in his complicated gaze. "As expected of someone I value, I'll give you this honor." With a loud shout, the Demon God Emperor's figure flashed, and he appeared 20 meters away from Long Houchen. Long Houchen crossed his right fist in front of his chest, pounding on his own chest, giving the Demon God Emperor a standard knight salute. "Thank you. I also hope you keep your promise." Feng Xiu looked at Long Houchen deeply. "If I had a choice, I hope you don't die like this. But it's too late to say anything now. Do you know that for you to die in my hands is also a very cruel thing to me? I want to kill my—" At this point, he paused. He didn't say anything else. A strange smile appeared on his face. "There are some things that you'd better not know. I hope you can die without regrets. Come. Unleash your greatest strength. Let me see just how far you can go right now." Long Houchen nodded. At this moment, there were no tears in his eyes. There was only persistence. A persistence that belonged to him. Standing there, Long Houchen didn't make a move. He seemed to have entered a strange state. In his eyes there was a deathly stillness. In his transparent golden eyes, the golden color became purer and purer. A layer of faint mist of light gradually rose around his body. As the mist of light rose, it was white in color. The aria of the goddess of light, blue rain, and hibiscus of light that Long Houchen had previously separated slowly merged above his head. Yiting had reappeared behind him. As Long Houchen's elemental spirit, once Long Houchen died, it would be difficult for her to survive given the close relationship between her and Long Houchen. But at this moment, there was no sorrow in Yiting's eyes. There was only a faint gentleness and persistence. She didn't even look at the Demon Emperor. Her eyes were fixed on Long Houchen. She didn't want to waste time on anything else. The orange-red and turquoise colors gradually met each other in the air. The golden Yiting became the catalyst for their fusion. The incandescent brilliance appeared in the Star Demon Tower once again. A strong divine aura rose into the sky, fusing with the white mist of light rising around Long Houchen's body. A strong incandescent flame burst forth. There was no doubt that Long Houchen had reached the peak of his life so far. Even his eyes had turned incandescent. Demonic god Huang Fengxiu quietly looked at Long Houchen. His eyes never changed. Sorrow and admiration were faintly rippling in the depths of his eyes. Long Houchen moved. His left foot suddenly took a step forward. The heavy sword in his hands slowly slashed out. His movements seemed very slow. But when they saw this sword, even experts like the Moon Demon and the Star Demon couldn't help but be moved. Long Houchen's sword didn't have any trajectory. It was filled with stubborn sword intent. This sword intent wasn't sharp, but it was unavoidable. Combined with the sword of creation and life, which had already surpassed ordinary divine weapons, the sword intent hidden within the sword had reached its peak. At this moment, he really achieved the purest sword heart illumination. He was the sword, and the sword was him. There was no distinction between them. He and the sword had become one in the state of being one with the world. Feng Xiu didn't move. He just quietly watched Long Houchen as the sword slowly slashed towards his head. At this moment, the entire Star Demon Tower had turned into a blazing white color because of Long Houchen's slash. Strong spiritual power fluctuations fluctuated violently in the air. All the dark aura was suppressed and compressed in the surroundings by Long Houchen's sword. Even the Star Demon was surrounded by starlight at this moment. It automatically emitted its own powerful aura to resist the light spiritual power contained in Long Houchen's sword. Behind Long Houchen, a pure white shadow slowly appeared. It was the goddess of light. It looked like a simple sword, but it had condensed everything Long Houchen had. Divine weapon, God's descent, sword intent, and all of his own determination and spiritual power. This was the pinnacle of his life, and it was very likely to be his last. The demon god Huang Fengxiu's expression changed slightly. He slowly raised his right hand, and his movement seemed very slow. Furthermore, there wasn't any powerful elemental aura accompanying his movement. It gave people the feeling that he was an ordinary human who simply and calmly raised his hand. One finger. Feng Xiu's finger slowly moved forward. That finger, as fair as a woman's, lightly touched the tip of the sword of creation and life. However, it was only this touch that caused all the incandescent light to instantly roll back. There was still no powerful dark aura appearing in the Star Demon Tower. However, Long Houchen's body began to tremble violently under the force of his finger. The terrifying sword intent finally exploded at this moment. However, it didn't explode towards Demon Emperor Feng Xiu. Instead, it burst out in all directions of the Star Demon Tower. Countless sharp sword intent auras moved in a frenzy. The ear-piercing howl made the Light of Dawn monster hunters feel as if they had returned to the scene when they first entered the Wailing Howl Cave. The explosion of sword chi and sword intent lasted for more than 10 breaths of time before gradually dissipating. The incandescent light gradually receded. Feng Xiu slowly retracted his right hand and brought his fingertip in front of him. Meanwhile, Long Houchen remained motionless in his previous position. All of his aura seemed to have been sucked dry by that sword. His eyes were still filled with determination, but it was a determination that didn't move. A drop of blood gradually seeped out of Feng Xiu's fair fingertip. It was a drop of dark red blood that emitted an intense golden light. Very good, very good. Feng Xiu suddenly laughed hysterically. As he threw his head back and laughed maniacally, the entire Star Demon Tower trembled. Amidst his laughter, the Moon Demon and Star Demon had no choice but to activate their own spiritual power to protect themselves. The Light of Dawn monster hunters were even more unbearable. One by one, they were forced to slam against the walls of the Star Demon Tower by the terrifying pressure brought about by the laughter. And it was also at this moment that Kair, who was in Wang Yuanyuan's arms, was jolted awake by the crazy laughter. Long Houchen, Kair immediately shouted as soon as she opened her eyes. She immediately saw Long Houchen, who was standing there quietly and motionlessly. She also saw the Demon Emperor, who was laughing maniacally. The Demon Emperor's power was really too terrifying. Even just this laughter alone was able to suppress them to the point where they couldn't move at all. Child, goodbye. The Demon Emperor's laughter suddenly stopped. He waved his hand mournfully, and the drop of dark red blood on his fingertip emitted an intense golden light. It flew towards Long Houchen like an arrow and imprinted itself on his left chest at lightning speed. Pooh! Blood burst out and a small bloody hole instantly appeared on Long Houchen's left chest, where his heart was. Immediately after, accompanied by a tremor, A bloody hole the size of a fist suddenly appeared where the bloody hole had penetrated. Strangely, not a single drop of blood flowed out. Only a bloody hole had appeared on Long Houchen's chest. His heart had disappeared. The fine gold foundation armor didn't even have the slightest resistance. No one could help Long Houchen. The restriction in the Star Demon Tower wasn't set up by the Star Demon Vasak at all. Instead, it was jointly set up by the three great demon gods, the Demon Emperor Feng Xiu, the Moon Demon Agars, and the Star Demon Vasak. Even the power of a supreme artifact couldn't travel through space to come here. No, Kai screamed frantically, but she was still suppressed by the aura emitted from the Demon Emperor's body and couldn't move at all. Seeing the scene of her beloved man's heart being broken, Kai felt her mind go blank. She spat out a mouthful of blood and her whole body went limp in Wang Yuanyuan's arms. Blank, blank, memory, memory. The sound of porcelain shattering kept erupting in Kai-er's mind. Everything that happened in the past appeared in her mind bit by bit. Are you okay? I can't speak. There are bad guys chasing me. They'll be here soon. Sister, save me. I'm the big brother, not the big sister. I can feel their aura. They'll be here soon. They can smell me. Hurry up and leave, or it'll be too late. No, I'm a man. I have to protect you. Little sister, where are you going? Let me help you. No need. Let me help you. I'll send you home. I said no need. Hey! Can you send me home? Okay. Where do you live? Go forward 760 feet, turn right for 380 feet, turn left for 230 feet and you'll be there. What's your name? Ah! My name is Long Houchen. What about you? My name is Kai-er. Kai-er, how long can you stay in the holy city? Why do you ask? I just want to know how many days before I can send you back. I'm just a blind girl. Is it really that important to send me back? I don't know. Don't you despise me? Why would I despise you? Kai-er, actually, I'm very ugly. I'm so ugly myself. What right do I have to despise you? Very ugly? Yes, very ugly. Then, if you have to hold my hand forever, will you be willing? I will. I'll help you. I'll do it. This is our home. Kai-er, I promise you, I'll give you a warm home in the future. Our home. Okay. Silly girl, hurry up and put on your clothes. Oh, okay. No peeking. Oh, okay. She remembered. Yes, she remembered. She remembered everything they had been together, every process of being together. Whether it was before or after the amnesia, all the memories merged at this moment. Tears flowed from Kai-er's eyes. Long Houchen's heart was broken. Her heart seemed to be broken as well. Her tears were light red, and gradually turned from light red to bright red. Long Houchen's body swayed a bit, then slowly fell to the ground. The stubbornness in his eyes didn't disappear from the beginning. As early as the moment he challenged the demon god emperor, he had already severed the soul shackles binding him. As his body fell to the ground, his eyes happened to look in Kai-er's direction. His eyes also slowly closed during this process. In Kai-er's eyes, his gaze was so gentle. Even in the process of closing his eyes, it seemed like he was telling something to Kai. There was a faint sadness, but there seemed to be more encouragement. As if he was telling Kai-er to live bravely. Yes, Long Houchen died. He died in peace. With the Demon Emperor's promise, his companions could finally leave this place alive. To him, this was enough. He was already satisfied that his companions were able to leave this place alive despite being in such a desperate situation. Yes, the moment he fell, he saw Kai-er's eyes. He understood too many things from her eyes. He saw the past, saw the coldness and gentleness that only belonged to Kai. She regained her memories. She finally regained her memories. Long Houchen was so reluctant, but even at the moment of his death, he was still unwilling to let Kai-er see the pain and unwillingness in his heart. So, he closed his eyes, and there was even a faint smile on his face. Bang! Long Houchen's body seemed to fall heavily to the ground. Strangely, there was still no blood flowing out of the wound on his left chest. His entire body sank into darkness after this heavy fall. Everything seemed to disappear in an instant. He felt himself flying far away in the darkness. This feeling was very comfortable. It was as if all his worries and responsibilities had been removed at this moment. He felt very, very light as he flew in a certain direction. There was only endless relaxation and relaxation. The eyes of the demon hunters of the bright glimmer of light demon hunt squad were all lifeless. They just stared at Long Houchen, not even tears could flow from their eyes. Time seemed to have frozen at this moment, forever frozen. They wanted to shout, they wanted to shout, they wanted to roar, but they just couldn't make any sound. The leader who led them across the continent and braved countless dangers, the holy knight of the Knights Templars, the chosen one, the son of light, Long Houchen, was dead. He left them forever. He died. Long Houchen's corpse lay there quietly. The smile on his face was still there, but he seemed to have taken away the souls of the entire Light of Dawn monster hunters. At this moment, all of them seemed to have become the walking dead. Demon Emperor Feng Xiu's eyes were also lifeless. He quietly looked at Long Houchen, who was lying there. His finger, which was bleeding, was dripping blood onto the ground drop by drop. Yes, he was injured. Although he didn't use any of his abilities or equipment, he was injured. The Demon Emperor, who had a spiritual power of 1,000,000 and was invincible across the continent, had his finger pierced by Long Houchen's last attack. The gazes of the Moon Demon and Star Demon also froze. However, deep in their hearts, they heaved a huge sigh of relief at the same time. This person was finally dead. Austin's and Griffin's blood contract partner was dead. The threat of the demons was finally gone, and so was the divine retribution that they were so afraid of. In the Black Jade world, a gigantic figure was crawling in the cave, its 6 heads raised high. The surroundings were a mess. In this sturdy cave, the countless broken marks were so similar to its body. Its 6 heads were still raised high, but its 6 eyes were dripping with blood. Purple blood. Its aura was weakening bit by bit, and the bright amethyst-like luster on its body was also gradually fading. The low roar of unwillingness echoed in the cave, but its 6 heads were still held high, unwilling to fall, unwilling to fall. All the pressure disappeared in an instant. The Light of Dawn monster hunters' demon hunters fell to the ground one after another. Each of them still landed on the ground in a daze. Their gazes never left the young man who lay on the ground with a smile on his face, but had already lost all signs of life. With a fierce struggle, Kai forcibly stood up. There were no longer any tears in her eyes. In her mind, the scene of him using his body to block the enemy's attacks for her time and time again before she lost her memories replayed in her mind. Her body trembled uncontrollably, and her entire aura became more and more intense as she trembled. Step by step, she staggered towards him. When she reached him, Kai fell on his body with a thud. She gently lifted her hand and placed it on his handsome and clean face. She started to feel around. He's dead. Yes, he's dead. My Houchen is dead. You. How could you bear to leave me like this? Kai murmured softly. Fool, I remember. I remember everything about us. You're my fool. I'm not dead yet. How could you die? You said it. You said that you would protect me for life and be my guardian knight forever. How could you die like this? Ding, with a soft ring, Long Houchen's chest moved. A golden object popped out from the damaged left side of the Golden Foundation battle armor. It was a small golden skull. It was the eternal melody that had been embedded into Long Houchen's chest muscles back then. Now that he was dead, the eternal melody finally bounced out of his body and left his body. As the key to the Tower of Eternity, it didn't have to protect a dead man. So it left. Kai grabbed that golden skull almost instantaneously, and her body couldn't help but tremble even more violently. But at that moment, her body suddenly stiffened. But the stiffness only lasted for a short moment. She threw herself on Long Houchen and burst into tears. "Get out, all of you, get out!" The silent demon emperor suddenly erupted. He once again entered the hysterical state from before and roared madly. The door of the Star Demon Tower suddenly opened. A hurricane suddenly appeared, sweeping up the bodies of every demon hunter, including Long Houchen's corpse, and blowing them out of the Star Demon Tower. "Pass down my order. No one from our clan is to stop them from leaving Demon's Heart City. No one from our clan is to pursue them. Otherwise, our entire clan will be exterminated." The Demon Emperor's cold voice suddenly burst forth. Under the explosion of his terrifying mental power, it instantly spread throughout Demon's Heart City. The terrifying pressure in that moment caused all the demons in Demon's Heart City to crawl on the ground, not daring to move. Yes, their great emperor was angry. And every time the Demon Emperor became angry, it was almost always the end of the people. With a fierce wave of his hand, the Star Demon Tower closed again. Only now did Demon Emperor Maples gasp for breath. He raised his head, but his chest heaved up and down violently. The terrifying magic waves caused the Moon Demon God Agar's and the Star Demon God Vasak's expressions to change, and they trembled slightly. The emotionally unstable Demon Emperor was absolutely terrifying. Even if he wanted to kill the two of them, it was not impossible. Maples clenched his fists tightly. In the end, a drop of dark golden tear fell from the corner of his eye. He suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the Moon Demon Agar's. "Are you wondering why I let these people go? Isn't that right? Isn't that right?" Agar's was silent. He lowered his head and did not dare to say a word. "Let me tell you, because the young man I just killed had my blood flowing in his body. He was originally the second heir of the demons that I had decided on. From the day he was born, I had never done anything for him until the day I discovered his existence. I had never interfered with anything about him. However, he had formed a blood pact with Austin and Griffin. I personally killed a loved one who had my blood flowing in his body. Do you understand? Do you understand? The only thing I could do for him was to let him die with as little regret as possible." Agar suddenly raised his head, his eyes brimming with disbelief. He couldn't believe that Long Houchen, who was known as God's chosen one, the Son of Light, the hope of humanity's future, actually had the Demon God Emperor's bloodline flowing in his veins. That was the royal bloodline of the heaven-defying Demon Dragon clan. The Star Demon Vasak did not say a word. Other than the Demon Emperor, only he, who had used the Great Prophecy spell, knew the relationship between Long Houchen and the Demon Emperor. Chapter 223. Feng Xiu suddenly laughed. His emotions seemed to have calmed down in an instant. He said coldly, "The holy war is over. Agars, go and have all the troops withdraw. After all, there is still a portion of human blood flowing in his body. He has already died by my hands for the sake of the continuation of our race. For the next 10 years, our race will not take the initiative to attack the humans. This will be an offering to his soul in heaven." His gaze suddenly became gentle again. "Child, at the moment of your death, you did not know the relationship between you and me. This is all I can do for you. There is a saying among humans, even a vicious tiger will not eat its cubs. This means that no matter how ruthless a person is, they will not kill their own children or their own family. However, I killed you. I killed you for the sake of the continuation of our race. You're my family, my family. Ha 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 ha." The Demon God Emperor's hysterical laughter once again caused the Star Demon Pagoda to violently shake. All of the sealing power within the Star Demon Pagoda was instantly ignited by him, barely keeping the Star Demon God Pillar standing in the pagoda from collapsing. Bang bang bang! The members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters fell to the ground almost at the same time. The Demon Emperor had actually let them go, but at this moment, there was only endless sorrow and pain in their hearts. Kair hugged Long Houchen's corpse and landed on her back, not letting him suffer any further impact. Her slender waist suddenly exerted strength, and she forcibly straightened herself from the ground. Sima Xian hugged the ball of light and rolled on the ground before standing up. His eyes were bloodshot, and he swung the ball of light and rushed back. "I'll fight it out with them." "Stop!" A cold shout rang out like a clap of thunder. Kai Er's extremely cold voice forcibly stopped Sima Xian. The members of the Bright Glimmer of Dawn Demon Hunt Squad were also attracted by her shout and looked at her at the same time. Kai Er's gaze, brimming with determination and deathly stillness, was overflowing with cold light as she coldly looked at everyone. "All of you, follow me." In her voice, there was an unquestionable dignity. At this moment, the members of the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters felt that the reincarnation Saintess, who had dominated the Monster Hunters' trials, had returned. Their wills could not help but be affected by Kair's voice. Kai Er's face was still stained with 2 bloody tears. Looking at her, no matter how painful and sorrowful they were, no one from the Light of Dawn would object to her words at this moment. Yes, no matter how sad they were, how could they be compared to Kair? "All of you, follow me," Kair shouted coldly. She hugged Long Houchen tightly and soared into the sky. She did not evade the powerhouses of the demons who had already surrounded them from all directions. A pair of gray spiritual wings suddenly spread out behind her and propelled her body into the distance. A large number of powerhouses from the heaven-defying Demon Dragon clan, the Moon Devils, and the Star Demons were floating in the air around the Star Demon Palace. However, none of them dared to attack her. They had all heard the Demon Emperor's words very clearly. Who would dare to disobey him? A Bao, who was dressed in dark purple armor, stood quietly on the top of the wall and watched Kair fly into the sky with Long Houchen in her arms. For a moment, his eyes became a little blank. He felt as if he had lost something in his heart. Only he knew how much effort he had put in over the past 2 years. His almost crazy cultivation had made his strength take a qualitative leap more than once. However, at this moment, he realized that his opponent was gone. Long Houchen, who was being carried by Kair, had clearly lost his vitality. The hole in his chest looked so glaring. He's dead. He's actually dead? He died at the hands of his father. A Bao did not feel the slightest bit relieved. Instead, his heart was filled with indignation. He had wanted to defeat him with his own hands. However, Long Houchen had died just like that. He had died at the hands of his own father. He had no right to question it, but he knew that this would be the biggest regret of his life. Long Houchen was dead. He would never be able to prove to Yu Yi that he was stronger than him. The members of the Light of Dawn released their spiritual wings and followed behind Kair as they flew into the distance. Cold tears flowed uncontrollably down their faces. Even the light emitted by their spiritual wings fluctuated violently because of this. As their bodies glided through the air, Kair's gaze fell on Long Houchen's pale, bloodless face. He was still so handsome, but there was no longer any vitality in him. Her memory had been restored, but he was gone. He did not even say a word to her, who had regained her memory. Kair did not cry anymore, because in her heart, there was still one last hope. The last hope that she had produced the moment she came into contact with Long Houchen's body. If it were not for the existence of this glimmer of hope, she would not have survived in the Star Demon Tower. She would definitely have followed Long Houchen. As they flew at high speed, they quickly flew out of Demonic City. They left behind the city that had brought them endless sorrow and pain. After flying for a full hour, Kair suddenly retracted her wings and descended towards the ground with Long Houchen in her arms. Although the members of the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters did not know what was going on, they still followed her and descended. Although Long Houchen was dead, because of the existence of Zhang Fangfang, their monster hunters still maintained a complete organizational structure. Long Houchen's words before his death echoed in their hearts. They could not die like this. They had to avenge their leader. One day they must return to Demonic City. This was a part of the forest that couldn't be considered dense. Kai carried Long Houchen and directly drilled into it, carefully putting him down on a flat grassy plain. The members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters surrounded him. Chen Inger cried bitterly. The tears in the eyes of the others could not be stopped. Kai slowly squatted down. Her eyes were attracted by the blue ring on her finger. The forget-me-not ring. He returned it to me. Gently taking off the ring, Kai pulled up Long Houchen's left hand and put it on his ring finger. Fool, why did you return it to me? It has long belonged to you forever, just like my heart. As she spoke, Kai raised her hand and slowly took off the eternal melody necklace on Long Houchen's neck. The golden skull that popped out of Long Houchen's chest shone in the air. Taking a deep breath, a trace of stubbornness flashed in her eyes. Slowly, she put the key to the Tower of Eternity, which still carried the warmth of Long Houchen's body, around her neck. The moment the eternal melody touched her body, there was a sudden burst of golden light. With a whoosh, the skull drilled into Kai's lapel and became closely connected with her body, just like when she was with Long Houchen. The Tower of Eternity needed a spokesperson in the human world. Long Houchen had already died in the Demon Emperor's forbidden barrier and had lost his value. Of course, it had to choose a new spokesperson. This had nothing to do with the undead calamity Electrolux's choice of a successor. The Tower of Eternity had already become greedier after continuously obtaining souls from this world. Its sense of autonomy had also become stronger. Let's go. Kai glanced at her companions around her. After saying these 3 words lightly, a strong golden light suddenly burst out from her chest. Just like when Long Houchen brought them through the teleportation, it swept everyone into it. The golden light flashed. They entered the teleportation. When the light flashed again, they had already returned to the Tower of Eternity. The strong death aura of the Tower of Eternity was still there. But at this moment, the eyes of the Light of Dawn monster hunters were also filled with a deathly silence. Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi had been anxiously waiting for their return. Seeing their return, the two hurriedly ran over. However, their footsteps soon slowed down, and their eyes froze in an instant. Because they saw Long Houchen lying motionless on the ground with a fatal wound on his chest. She looked at his handsome face, which was so pale that it had lost all color of blood. The leader of the Light of Dawn monster hunters, the Son of Light, had died in battle. How could this be? Yang Wenjiao said hoarsely. Chen Inger suddenly threw herself into his arms and burst into tears. Duan Yi didn't ask. He just slowly knelt on one knee, put his right fist on his left chest with difficulty, and gave a knight's salute to Long Houchen. Demons and humans had been fighting for 6,000 years. After the Dark Age came, how many humans had died in the hands of demons like Long Houchen? He didn't need to know anything more. The result was right in front of him. Long Houchen was dead. Kai squatted down and gently hugged Long Houchen in her arms. She murmured, come out quickly. Come out quickly." No one understood what she was saying. At this time, Kai's cold eyes were filled with anxiety. Just when they were confused, suddenly, a dark green light quietly drilled out of Long Houchen's golden foundation armor. This dark green light looked very weak, so weak that it was like a cloud of smoke that could disperse at any time. A weak voice also sounded in this dark green smoke. "He is already dead. The contract between him and me is also gradually disappearing. The only thing I can do is to protect his soul from dissipating for 7 days. But you only have 7 days. The only chance to resurrect him is in this Tower of Eternity. Only by obtaining the inheritance of the Tower Master and relying on the profound meaning of light necromancy can it be possible to restore his soul and recast his heart. If he can be resurrected, the contract I left on him will be restored. Otherwise, after 7 days, his soul will dissipate, and his soul will be imprisoned by this tower of eternity, never to be reincarnated again. So, within 7 days, if you can't resurrect him, take him away from here. At least let his soul not suffer here." The voice stopped here, and the wisp of dark green smoke dissipated. Yes, this was the glimmer of hope in Kyr's heart. It was the power that supported her to lead the Light of Dawn monster hunters out of Demonic City. The moment she came into contact with Long Houchen's corpse in the Star Demon Tower, this voice appeared in her heart once, telling her that there was still a glimmer of hope for Long Houchen. So, no matter how sad Kyr was, she had to bring Long Houchen back here, back to the safety of the Tower of Eternity, and find a chance to resurrect him. That voice is... Wang Yuanyuan said blankly. I know. It's the little girl from the Dream Temple. That's right, it must be her. Lin Xian suddenly jumped up and said. Han Yu grabbed Lin Xian's shoulder and shouted excitedly. Yes, it's Yi Xiaolei. It's her. She has some kind of contract between her and the leader. She came to help us. The leader has a chance to resurrect, a chance. The dead silence from before was swept away in an instant. Everyone's eyes had a glimmer of hope again, but they were also desperately wiping away the tears on their faces, but the tears could not be wiped clean. But the tears now were different from before. They were tears of excitement now. Even if there was only a glimmer of hope, for them now, it was like grasping at a life-saving straw. Kyr hugged Long Houchen tightly. Tears gushed out again, but she did not immerse herself in sadness. She suddenly shouted, Who has a strong rope or chain? Sima Xian said, I do. While saying that, he took out a dark golden chain from his storage ring and gave it to Kyr. This chain was 5 meters long. Exactly the same as the chain on his Vigor Pill of Light. Kyr took the chain and stood up while hugging Long Houchen. She looked towards the end of the first floor of the Tower of Eternity and said with a decisive tone, 7 days, we only have 7 days. Within 7 days, we must climb to the top of the Tower of Eternity. I want to obtain the inheritance of the holy law of necromancy, Calamity Necromancer Electrolux. Yes, the Light of Dawn monster hunters all responded in unison. The momentum that erupted in that instant gave people the feeling of a mountain torrent. I'll go too. Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi said almost at the same time. Their injuries had mostly recovered. Even though the battle was still a bit difficult, how could they retreat at this time? Kyr did not say much and said to Wang Yuanyuan next to her, Help me tie Long Houchen on my back with this chain. With him by our side, there's nothing that can stop us from moving forward. Okay. Wang Yuanyuan did not say anything else and immediately stepped forward. Qin Inger, who was also a woman, also broke free from Yang Wenjiao's arms and helped Wang Yuanyuan tie Long Houchen's body from the back to Kyr. Long Houchen's slender and burly figure looked a bit strange with Kyr on his back. His arms and legs had to be wrapped around Kyr's body, especially his legs, which had to be wrapped around Kyr's waist in order to tie him securely. Feeling the weight of Long Houchen, the determination in Kyr's eyes became more intense. With a flash of gray light, the Grim Reaper's scythe reappeared in her hand. Not sure if it was because she had recovered her memory, but the moment the Grim Reaper's scythe appeared in her hand, this artifact emitted a different luster than before. The murderous aura solidified, and the scythe became more crystal clear. Let's go, Kyr said as she strode toward the staircase leading to the second floor of the Tower of Eternity. The members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters, plus Zhang Fangfang, Yang Wenjiao, and Duan Yi followed behind. A group of 9 people, carrying Long Houchen's corpse, went straight to the staircase. Long Houchen and the others had already passed all the tests on the first and second floor of the Tower of Eternity, and had been recognized by the 4 Holy Guard. At this time, the eternal melody was on Kyr's chest, and the 4 Holy Guards had naturally become her guards. However, in the Tower of Eternity, the 4 Holy Guards could not help them fight. Entering the second floor, everyone released their spiritual wings and flew toward the deepest part. They had never entered the third floor of the Tower of Eternity. Ever since they learned from the sun-moon divine snail that the holy law of necromancy, Calamity Necromancer Electrolux was the culprit who caused the destruction of the human world and caused great damage to the vitality of the human world. Long Houchen was not willing to receive any trace of his inheritance from the Tower of Eternity. Therefore, the members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters did not continue to move forward. However, it was different now. Kyr had replaced Long Houchen and became the inheritor. Moreover, she had to obtain this inheritance in order to resurrect Long Houchen. Not only did they have to move forward, but they also had to rush to the seventh floor of the Tower of Eternity and obtain the inheritance of Calamity Necromancer Electrolux. Therefore, they did not dare to delay. 7 days, they only had 7 days. If they could not resurrect Long Houchen within these 7 days, they would never have another chance. Now was not the time to consider how difficult it would be to pass the next 4 floors. Even if the test they faced was like facing the Demon Emperor, Kyr would not stop moving forward. If Long Houchen was really dead, then she would definitely follow Long Houchen. Soon, they arrived at the passage from the second floor of the Tower of Eternity to the third floor. Kyr turned around and looked at her companions behind her. Hanyu said in a deep voice, "Kyr, before our leader is resurrected, you are our acting leader. Give the order. Even if we have to use our lives to fill it, we will definitely help you to the end." Kyr took a deep breath. She did not say thank you, but just nodded to her companions. She was the first to walk into the passage. With a flash of light, the strange teleportation sent everyone to the third floor of the Tower of Eternity. However, as soon as they appeared here, everyone felt a chill. The surrounding atmosphere had clearly become viscous. It was no longer a world that needed to float in the air. What they saw was darkness. The ground was paved with black square bricks. In the sky there was a dark purple moon. It was as if they had entered another world after arriving here. Moreover, it was an endless world. As far as the eye could see, there was no end. There was only endless darkness. Amidst the endless darkness, countless dark purple flames danced. That was the soul fire that belonged to the skeleton soldiers. Yes, on the third floor of the Tower of Eternity, what they saw was an endless sea of skeletons. And it was also here that it was filled with even more terrifying dark aura. In this place, there were only dark elements and a thick deathly stillness. However, no matter what the enemy was, the members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters had only persistence in their eyes at this time. In their hearts, there was only one thing to do, and that was to break through all obstacles and barriers and resurrect Long Houchen. To the surprise of her companions, Kyr did not rush to the large sea of skeletons immediately. Her eyes were cold and calm, without hysterical madness. How she wanted to rush over regardless of everything. However, she could not. Because she knew that she probably only had one chance. She must not waste even a little bit of time. Therefore, she could not fight blindly. Only by passing all the tests in the shortest time possible was what she had to do now. On the first and second floor of the Tower of Eternity, we faced the main test of the 4 holy guards. The attributes of the 4 holy guards are fire, ice, earth, and wind. They also represent the most basic 4 elements: water, fire, earth, and wind. Looking at the situation in front of us, our first test on the third floor is the darkness. The holy guards once said that there are a total of 12 of them. So, the one presiding over the test here must be the 5th holy guard, the dark attribute holy guard. The skeletons in the Tower of Eternity are not the same as the skeletons in Haoyue's world. Everyone has experienced their strength. With so many skeletons, it is enough to kill all of us. Even if we can kill them all, who knows how long it will take. Therefore, what we have to do is not to kill them all, but to find the dark holy guard among them and defeat him. Pass the test in front of us. Kai-Er's cold voice echoed in the third floor of the Tower of Eternity. Her calm words gradually calmed the impatience and impulses in the hearts of the glimmer of light monster hunters. They were surprised to find that although there was no Long Houchen's command, Kai-Er, who had become the acting leader, had completely immersed herself in her role. At this time, she was still able to maintain sufficient calmness. Unknowingly, confidence grew in the hearts of every demon hunter from the glimmer of light monster hunters. Yes, as early as the establishment of their monster hunters, the team was a dual-core team. It was just that Kai-Er's brilliance had always been overshadowed by Long Houchen. Now, not only was Kai-Er the Grim Reaper's favored one, but she had also recovered her original memories. Long Houchen was dead, and the only chance for resurrection was right in front of her. Kai-Er no longer concealed or restrained herself. She wanted to erupt with everything she had and lead her teammates to fight for that last chance. Han Yu! Kai-Er shouted in a deep voice. Here. Han Yu took a step forward. Kai-Er said, "In a moment, we will launch an all-out attack. Once the battle starts, the dark holy guard hidden among the skeletons will not be able to stay calm. Your evil eye overlord has the strongest spiritual power. Find him and lock onto him." "Yes." Han Yu immediately responded, and at the same time, summoned the evil eye overlord. Zhang Fangfang in front, Yang Wenjiao, Duan Yi and Han Yu in the back. The rest of the formation remains the same. Inger, other than Madul, do not summon a large amount of spiritual power. Kill! With the shout of the last word, Kerr pointed the Grim Reaper's scythe forward, and Zhang Fangfang held his shield in front of him. Together, they rushed towards the sea of skeletons in front of them. The skeletons' bodies were black, just like this space. The only thing that could bring some light to this space was the dancing soul flame in their eyes. As Kai-Er and the others moved, the sea of skeletons also moved. They swarmed forward, raised their weapons, and rushed towards them. The spiritual wings behind her spread out. Kai-Er did not stay with the team. As an assassin, she should be wandering outside. In a flash, she had already surpassed Zhang Fangfang and rushed to the front. Like a sharp knife, she fiercely cut into the sea of skeletons. As early as 2 years ago, they had already passed the first 2 levels of the Tower of Eternity and could enter the 3rd level. It was just that they had not been able to enter. Now that they had finally entered, the 3rd level's test should not be too difficult for them. However, when they really rushed into the sea of skeletons, Kai-Er immediately felt a huge pressure. The 3rd level's test had greatly surpassed the 2nd level's in terms of difficulty. Here, there were no more checkpoints but a bigger test. It was no longer a one-on-one, but a team battle. With a flash of gray light, a large number of skeletons were swept into pieces by the Grim Reaper's scythe. With just one attack, Kai-Er had at least destroyed the soul flame of 20 skeletons. But she also felt that the strength of these skeletons was actually equivalent to a 6th-order human powerhouse. Although they did not have the combat skills of the Holy Guards, they won in terms of their endless numbers. But it was also at this time that the strength of the team was revealed. 4 golden halos expanded almost at the same time. It covered a large area. These 4 golden halos were naturally released by the 4 Temple Knight in the team. Long Houchen was no longer here, but their team still had the most Knight, and they were all the most outstanding Knight of the current generation of Knights Templars, the 7th Order Temple Knight. The 4 halos cast the same skill, the Guardian Knight's Holy Light Protection Halo. Against all dark attribute enemies, increased attack effectiveness by 30%. Dark attribute enemies that were attacked by the Holy Light Protection Halo would have their speed and attributes weakened. This was a 6th Order Halo, and when it was cast by 4 Temple Knight at the same time, it covered hundreds of square meters. The charging sea of skeletons instantly slowed down. The pressure on Kai-Er, who was at the forefront like a sharp knife, was instantly relieved. At this time, Kai-Er's terrifying attack power was fully displayed. With her memory restored, It also allowed her to regain the assassin's instincts that she had cultivated since childhood. With the Grim Reaper scythe in her hands, it was like the Grim Reaper had descended. Streaks of gray light filled with terrifying destructive power crisscrossed the battlefield, and wherever they passed, large swathes of skeletons were shattered. Under her lead, the Light of Dawn monster hunters charged into the depths of the sea of skeletons at an astonishing speed. The Evil Eye Lord was now hovering above Han Yu's head, invisible spirit waves quietly sweeping through the sea of skeletons. It was searching for the culprit that had created this sea of skeletons. Wang Yuanyuan and Sima Xian protected the team from both sides. With Long Haochen dead, the extreme grief and anger they had suppressed in their hearts erupted in this sea of skeletons. The two of them, one gold and one silver, took care of all the skeletons charging at them from both sides. Almost all the black skeletons they killed were reduced to dust. Lin Xian didn't stay idle either. The fire crystal staff in his hand was like a magic cannon, bombarding the sea of skeletons with a meteor shower. As they killed these skeletons, they gradually discovered some benefit. The situation that had occurred on the first floor of the Tower of Eternity reappeared. On the first floor of the Tower of Eternity, they didn't encounter many skeletons, but each skeleton could provide them with 10 points of spiritual energy. This allowed the Light of Dawn monster hunters to grow for the first time, surpassing their peers and becoming the new generation's #1 monster hunters. At this time, although these skeletons didn't provide them with 10 points of spiritual energy each time they killed a skeleton, their spiritual energy would increase by 1 point. Don't underestimate this point. Killing 1 or 2 wasn't obvious, but if they killed hundreds of skeletons, their spiritual energy would increase by a few hundred points. If Long Haochen hadn't been killed by the Demon Emperor, they would definitely be overjoyed to find such a discovery here. They wouldn't need to rush to find the Dark Holy Guard, they could just kill them and greatly increase their spiritual energy. However, they couldn't do that now. They had to break through the barrier in front of them as soon as possible to buy time for their leader's resurrection. Suddenly, Kai, who was charging at the front, flashed. Her delicate body somersaulted in the air and returned to the group, landing in the middle of her companions. Stop! At the same time, she stabbed the Grim Reaper scythe in her hand into the ground. The Grim Reaper shadow behind her slowly floated in the air and quickly became clear. It put its hands together, and a strange pattern formed on the Grim Reaper shadow's hands. The pattern was white and quickly combined into a circular halo. There seemed to be countless fine lines on the halo, which finally formed this mageweth. As soon as Kai retreated, Zhang Fangfang suddenly felt the pressure increase. A large number of black skeleton warriors rushed towards him. Taking a step forward with his left foot, the shield in front of his chest, and the heavy sword in his right hand raised high above his head, Zhang Fangfang suddenly shouted. Suddenly, thousands of golden lights burst out from the sword, dyeing a large area around it golden. Light of Judgment. Under the illumination of the Light of Judgment, although these level 6 skeletons wouldn't die immediately, their soul fires were still beating violently, and they couldn't help but retreat in panic. Some of the skeletons that were closer were directly shattered by the Light of Judgment. The surrounding dark aura was greatly reduced. At this moment, Kai-Er's magic was completed. Purify. These 2 cold words were spat out from her red lips, and the mageweth formed by the Grim Reaper shadow in the air suddenly spread out. A circle of white light could be seen expanding rapidly. Everywhere the white light passed, the black skeletons actually turned white and froze in place, not moving an inch. In this boundless world of darkness, a large number of white skeletons suddenly appeared, giving off an extremely strange feeling. Immediately after, these white skeletons turned into wisps of white light and rose into the air, rushing towards the Grim Reaper shadow. In the process of rising, their souls fused with the white light. The gray shadow of the Grim Reaper also became more solid. Gorgeous gray armor covered his entire body. Every part of the armor seemed to be made of sharp blades, sparkling and translucent, sparkling with specks of starlight. The only thing that could not be seen clearly was its face. It was like an illusory night sky, deep and boundless. Kyr leaped up again and landed in front of Zhang Fangfang. She waved the Grim Reaper scythe and led her companions forward. Just now, she had purified the lives of thousands of black skeletons, and her spiritual power had increased by more than 1,000 points. At this moment, the black skeletons in the distance suddenly stopped and moved to the sides, revealing a passage. At this moment, all the black skeletons seemed to have quietened down. Then, the crisp sound of horse hooves could be heard. The clop, clop, clop became clearer and clearer. A tall, burly figure appeared in the line of sight of the light of dawn monster hunters. This burly figure was covered in black armor, and he was riding on a skeleton horse that was also covered in armor. Both he and the horse were emitting a dark purple glow. As soon as he appeared, the dark aura in the air suddenly became extremely dense. The black skeletons within a radius of 100 meters around him were also covered in a layer of dark purple brilliance. They came out on their own? Without a doubt, this black night in front of them should be the obstacle they were going to face. Although the test of the Tower of Eternity was difficult, it was not impossible to complete. If the black skeletons here were really endless, even a powerhouse like the Demon Emperor would be exhausted to death sooner or later. Therefore, these endless black skeletons were just a kind of spiritual test for them. When they killed a certain number, the Black Knight in front of them, which was likely to be the 8th Holy Guard, would naturally appear. "Follow me," Kyr shouted coldly and was the first to rush forward. She dragged the Grim Reaper scythe by her side, and the sharp tip left a deep mark on the ground. A strong murderous intent instantly burst out from her body. At this moment, Kyr's entire body was covered in a layer of gray. It was a crystal-clear gray color. Soon, she approached the central passageway of the Sea of Skeletons. As soon as she rushed into the passageway, the black skeletons on both sides suddenly pounced on her frantically, trying to block her way. Kyr looked cold, but there was a ball of fire in her heart, a ball of fire that burned intensely. At this moment, in her mind, the various times when she was with Long Houchen kept echoing. No matter how strong the enemy in front of her was, she would only move forward. Unless she died, she would not stop moving forward. The Grim Reaper shadow that had absorbed a large amount of purified soul aura followed above Kyr's head, like her shadow. However, it did not display any abilities. Its body was also the same gray as Kyr's. A gray that was filled with the aura of death and slaughter. Zhang Fangfang and the rest of the Light of Dawn monster hunters followed behind Kyr. Their speed was not slow at all. Just as Kyr was surrounded and attacked by the black skeletons on both sides, they brazenly rushed into the Sea of Skeletons. How could these grade 6 black skeletons stop their charge? Just like before, they rushed in and quickly caught up to Kyr. Every time Kyr swung the Grim Reaper scythe, she would definitely end the life of a group of skeletons. After these black skeletons were killed by the Grim Reaper scythe, they would turn into a gray stream of air and soar into the sky, merging with the Grim Reaper shadow in the air. Chapter 224. In the blink of an eye, Kyr had led her companions into the midst of the Black Knight's purple skeletons. With the Black Knight's buff, the skeleton's strength had increased significantly. Kyr's advancing speed had decreased drastically. The purple skeletons were much stronger than the skeletons from before, be it in terms of attack or resistance. Their combat skills were also stronger. Not only did Kyr have to protect herself, but she also had to protect Long Houchen, who was on her back. Hence, she did not dare to advance too recklessly. Even so, the purple skeletons could only perish in front of her Grim Reaper scythe. She was getting closer and closer to the Black Knight. The Black Knight's eye sockets were filled with purplish-black soul flames. His gaze was locked onto Kyr as he slowly retrieved the 5-meter-long spear from his saddle. The Black Knight was over 3 meters tall. In addition to the 4-meter-long and 2-meter-tall skeletal horse he was riding, He looked like a giant compared to Kyre. The purplish-black flames instantly rose on the spear, and the skeletal horse abruptly raised its hooves. In an instant, the air within the area enveloped by the purple light suddenly became viscous. Kyre also clearly felt her body suddenly stiffen. Following that, the thousands of purple lights seemed to have found their source, merging into the spear in his hand like rivers running into the sea. The purple light flashed. Like a bolt of cold lightning, it stabbed straight at Kyre. So strong. The moment the Black Knight made his move, the expressions of the Light of Dawn monster hunters changed. The aura emitted by this fellow had clearly reached the standard of a rank 9 powerhouse. Even if it was an early-stage rank 9, it was still a pure rank 9. Moreover, based on their experience fighting the Holy Guards, the strength of the Holy Guards could not be measured by their rank. The strength of the Holy Guards could not be simply measured by their rank. They possessed ancient martial skills that far surpassed experts of the same rank. Kyre didn't dodge. She had a partner behind her. If she dodged now, then Zhang Fangfang would be the first to bear the brunt. But it was also at this moment that a golden figure rushed into the sky from her side. As it rose, it turned completely purple. Tens of thousands of lightning bolts descended and bombarded in all directions. It was Sima Xian's purple thunder frenzy. Sima Xian wasn't helping Kyre resist the Black Knight's attack, but he was helping her get rid of the skeletons around her. She could face the Black Knight without any worries. This was the trust between the companions. They all believed that Kyre would definitely be able to withstand the enemy's attack. If it was Long Houchen facing such an attack from the Black Knight, there was no doubt that his Sun Moon Divine Snail shield would immediately block in front of him. But Kyre wasn't Long Houchen. She didn't have such a strong defense. If she only defended passively, she wouldn't be able to withstand the attack that had reached the rank 9 level. As an assassin, her strongest point was her attack. Therefore, she could only fight back with an attack. Kyre took a step forward with her left foot. With this short step, a series of overlapping shadows appeared behind her. The Grim Reaper's scythe slashed forward. A gray crystal light gathered at the tip of the scythe and struck the dark purple light. In an instant, the air seemed to have frozen, and a strange scene appeared. A series of afterimages appeared behind Kyre, and her whole body seemed to have become illusory, as if countless Kyre were stacked on top of each other. Then, the Grim Reaper scythe in her hand lit up. In the gray crystal light, the purple light of the Black Knight was extinguished. The black skeletons around Kyre were all blasted away by the purple lightning. At this moment, there was only one enemy in front of her. A huge figure rushed into the air. It was Sima Xian. He caught up with his ball of light in the air. He spread his spiritual wings and hovered in the air. The entire ball of light was glowing with purple light. Sima Xian's chest was also glowing with a dazzling scarlet light. Yang Wenjiao had replaced Sima Xian's position in time. He didn't expose any flaws to the team. After blocking the Black Knight's attack, Kyre's face was slightly pale. But she didn't stop. In a flash, she appeared in front of the Black Knight. She was so fast that it seemed like she had teleported. One must know that she was carrying Long Houchen on her back. But at this moment, it seemed that it didn't affect her speed at all. The Black Knight's spear flashed, and suddenly, it turned into a sky full of light shadows that enveloped Kyre. At the same time, a circle of dark purple light rippled from his body. The halo was only 10 meters in diameter, but it seemed to have solidified on the ground. The purple light rose. The dark elements in the third floor of the Tower of Eternity suddenly surged towards him. It felt a little like Long Houchen's Knight's charge up. However, Long Houchen's charge up couldn't be moved, but the Black Knight wasn't affected. As long as his body didn't leave the range of the halo, the charge up would continue. It would make his combat power even more terrifying. Kyre acted as though she didn't see all of this. Facing the thousands of spear lights, Kyre's body suddenly became illusory. The illusory figure was destroyed by the spear lights, and her real body had already appeared behind the Black Knight. The Grim Reaper scythe brought up a gloomy gray light in the air, and went straight for the Black Knight's back. The Black Knight didn't turn around, because it was too late. The end of the spear seemed to have eyes, and it pointed at the tip of the Grim Reaper scythe. Kyr's body trembled violently. In terms of spiritual power, she naturally couldn't compete with her opponent. However, the black spear was forcibly cut off by her Grim Reaper scythe. What was more powerful was that layers of light blades burst out from the Grim Reaper scythe like a lotus, and completely enveloped the Black Knight from behind, not giving him a chance to turn around. The Dark Knight was also very valiant. He made a prompt decision, and at the same time as he got off his skeleton horse and charged forward, a dark purple light shield suddenly appeared behind him. The Grim Reaper scythe's attack power was so terrifying that in the next second, the light shield had already shattered into pieces and disappeared. However, it still managed to buy some time for the Black Knight. He turned his body, and the spear in his hand swept behind him. Bang! There was a muffled sound, and Kyr's body was instantly swept away. It wasn't that she didn't want to dodge, but that she couldn't. The moment the Black Knight attacked, the surrounding air suddenly froze, and her speed was greatly reduced. At that moment there was a violent roar of thunder, and a purple light beam descended from the sky, blasting straight for the Black Knight. Sima Xian's purple godly thunder cannon was already ready in the air, and he was waiting for the moment when the Black Knight turned around to reveal an opening. He wasn't the only one who attacked. A loud and clear phoenix cry was hidden by the roar of thunder. The blue fire phoenix floated up, and behind the purple lightning, it rushed towards the Black Knight. Sima Xian and Lin Xian had already attacked with all their might. The purple godly thunder cannon and the blue fire phoenix were two of their strongest attacks. The Light of Dawn monster hunters would never fight alone. Kyr had attracted most of the Black Knight's attention, so their attacks were naturally able to unleash their greatest power. Compared to 2 years ago, Lin Xian's blue flame phoenix had undergone an enormous change. First of all, its size was much smaller than before. When it spread its wings, it didn't even reach 2 meters, looking like a large bird. However, this blue fire phoenix was much more beautiful than before. There were no flames rising from its body, and its entire body looked like a complete blue crystal sculpture. 3 beautiful tail feathers rippled behind its back, and its entire body was covered in fine hair, as if it were a living creature. Its pair of eyes were shining, and filled with the fierceness of fire. The Black Knight was indeed powerful. After sweeping away Kyr, he attacked directly. The skeleton horse beneath him suddenly raised its front hooves, and its upper body rose up. At the same time, it opened its mouth and spat out a dark purple flame, which turned into a shield in front of it. However, how could its dark purple flame withstand Sima Xian's epic-ranked Vigor Pill of Light and the evolved spiritual stove of purple godly thunder? The shield shattered instantly, and the purple godly thunder cannon bombarded the skeleton horse's body fiercely. In an instant, the skeleton horse seemed as if it had collided head-on with a thick city wall. Amidst a loud boom, it retreated explosively with the Dark Knight. The horse's head and the front half of its body were shattered, and the Dark Knight was flung off. When facing the leopard demon god Ozzy, Sima Xian had used the purple godly thunder cannon to forcefully block his opponent, and at that time, Ozzy was still in the demon god state. Be it the Black Knight or its mount, they could not compare to the leopard demon god in terms of strength. Naturally, they could not block this attack. However, the sacrifice of the skeleton horse did not come without a price. Although it was shattered, it also blocked most of the purple godly thunder cannon's attack for the Black Knight. Only some of the aftershocks hit the Black Knight. The Black Knight's body was surrounded by purple light, and its speed was slightly slowed. At this time, Lin Xian's blue fire phoenix arrived again. The loud and clear cry of the phoenix finally resounded through the 3rd floor of the Tower of Eternity. The Black Knight fell to the ground, pointed the spear in his hand forward, and a spear light pierced the blue fire phoenix's head. It tried to destroy it. However, the blue fire phoenix's body suddenly froze in the air. In the next instant, the blue fire phoenix turned into a blue light and disappeared instantly. It was a blue light that resembled a needle. Almost as soon as the blue light flashed, it pierced into the Black Knight's spear. The Black Knight clearly felt a huge threat. He let out a scream, and a strong purple light suddenly froze along with the dark aura rising from his body. A ball of light that was black in the center and surrounded by purple light lit up from his chest. His body also froze in that instant. Surrounded by the purple light, he stood there like a statue. This was obviously a passive defense skill, a bit like Divine Defense Block. In the next instant, the power of the blue fire phoenix spiritual stove exploded. The spear in the Black Knight's hand melted from the tip, and the blue light spread at an astonishing speed, reaching his arm in the blink of an eye. The Black Knight's spear and right arm actually vaporized in the blue light, and not a trace was left. The blue light continued to extend towards his torso, and there was a fierce conflict with the purplish-black ball of light on his chest. The power of the blue fire phoenix was too strong, and the terrifying heat caused the surrounding air to distort. Despite the obstruction of the purplish-black ball of light, the Black Knight's right shoulder quickly melted, and it continued to extend towards his chest. It was also at this time, a mournful gray light slashed at the Black Knight's back. The Grim Reaper in the sky also shot out a ray of gray light, shining on the mournful gray light blade. The gray light flashed, and the purplish-black ball of light shattered. At the same time, the left side of the Black Knight's body also shattered. The blue fire phoenix lost its obstruction, and immediately spread at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, the Black Knight's body was completely incinerated. A ball of purplish-black flames came out of the Black Knight's head, and a somewhat sharp voice sounded. "Eighth Holy Guard, at your command." With that, it turned into a ball of purple light, and merged into the eternal melody on Kai-Er's chest, and disappeared. From start to finish, the battle didn't take too long. Even Kai-Er didn't expect that they would be able to defeat the Eighth Holy Guard so easily. Without a doubt, the biggest contributors to this battle were Sima Xian and Lin Xian. The purple godly thunder cannon and the blue fire phoenix were the most important things to end this dark night. Kai-Er herself didn't use her full strength at all. Following the Black Knight's death, the surrounding world of darkness suddenly became distorted, and the black skeletons also disappeared in this distortion. When everything became clear again, they discovered that they were already in the middle of a wide tunnel. This place was a little similar to the first floor of the Tower of Eternity, except that the surrounding pillars were all black. In the distance they saw a white screen of light. Kai-Er took a deep breath, and nodded to Lin Xian and Sima Xian. At this time, the two had already sat down cross-legged. Sima Xian was slightly better off. He had the red dragon armor to reduce the backlash of the spiritual stove of purple godly thunder, but the spiritual power consumption was a little high. But Lin Xian couldn't. The power of the spiritual stove of blue fire phoenix was much stronger than before, but the backlash was also more intense, and the consumption of spiritual power was also extremely terrifying. One had to know that the opponent was a rank 9 powerhouse, and this rank 9 Black Knight would also melt in front of his blue fire phoenix. This was his strongest attack, much stronger than the Vulcan's finger. If it wasn't to buy time to save Long Houchen, he definitely wouldn't use the blue fire phoenix so easily. Sima Xian said to Kai-Er, "Vice Captain, don't worry about us, we've already passed this stage. It's safe here, let's stay here and recover our spiritual power. You guys continue forward. Once we recover a little, we'll catch up." In the Tower of Eternity, other than the light element, only Kai-Er's death element could absorb enough elements to recover spiritual power. The others couldn't rely on the elements inside the Tower of Eternity to recover their spiritual power, they could only rely on magic crystals. At this time, Lin Xian was holding a rank 8 fire element magic crystal in each hand, quickly recovering his spiritual power. These magic crystals weren't produced by demons, but had to be dug out from the bodies of demonic beasts. Because this was the only way to not have the dark element. Chapter 225. Let's move on. After Kai nodded to her companions again, she led them towards the white screen of light that was incompatible with the world of darkness. Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi were a little shocked at this moment. Although their cultivations were also at the 7th step, from the battle just now, they clearly understood that every member of the Bright Glimmer of Dawn Demon Hunt Squad was stronger than them. In the past, when they were in their respective teams, they were the mainstays of the team and were much stronger than the other team members. But in front of the Glimmer of Dawn monster hunters, all they could do was resist some of the skeleton soldiers. Moreover, because their injuries had not healed, they felt a little strained when resisting the black skeletons. On the other hand, the main forces of the Glimmer of Dawn monster hunters were Kair, Sima Xian, and Lin Xian. With the three of them working together, they actually killed a Type 9 powerhouse just like that. And it was a suppressive kill, causing the Black Knight to die in their hands before he could display his full strength. It was fine if Long Haochen and Kair were strong, but even Lin Xian and Sima Xian were so strong now. Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi had not even heard of the attacks they launched before. In fact, the main reason why Kair and the other two were able to defeat the Black Knight so easily was because of their equipment. In addition, they went all out. It seemed like a short battle, but Lin Xian and Sima Xian had already gone all out and used their trump card. The holy guards in the Tower of Eternity were strong, but they all had a common weakness, and that was equipment. Simply put, if the Black Knight was wearing Long Haochen's adamantine foundation battle armor, they might not be able to win even if they had 10 times the time. It was impossible not to pay a price. Kair's Grim Reaper Scythe was a divine weapon, and Sima Xian's Ball of Light was also at the epic stage. In the entire Light of Dawn monster hunters, who didn't have a legendary weapon or above, the white light screen was right in front of them. Passing the Black Knight's test didn't mean that they had passed the 3rd floor of the Tower of Eternity. According to their experience from the first 2 levels, they had only passed half of the tests on this level. The further they went, the more difficult the test would be. Crueler battles were still waiting for them. Kai took a step forward and stepped into the white curtain of light. Zhang Fangfang, Wang Yuanyuan, and Chen Ying'er followed closely behind. As soon as they stepped out of the white light screen, everyone couldn't help but let out a soft snort. That was because the air behind the light screen was simply too different from the air on the other side. They were completely opposite. Before, it was an absolute world of darkness. At this moment, when they stepped out of the white light screen, they were greeted by an incomparably rich aura of light. The surrounding darkness had already disappeared, and in its place was endless light. The pillars on both sides were exactly the same, but they emitted a golden brilliance full of holy aura. The ground was also completely golden, and the magnificent patterns extended all the way forward. There was no sea of skeletons. The second half of the 3rd floor of the Tower of Eternity was completely empty. All the way to the end. At the end of the 3rd floor was still a statue. The statue of the holy law of necromancy, the sleeping calamity Electrolux. Under the statue, a person sat cross-legged. A white light element magic robe covered his body. His head was slightly lowered, so Kai and the others couldn't see his face. He just sat under the statue of Electrolux, as if he had been sitting there for an eternity. It also seemed like he was waiting for the arrival of Kai and the others. Although there was only one opponent this time, Kai and the others' expressions became more solemn. It was precisely because there was only one opponent in front of him that his strength would undoubtedly be stronger. At the very least, he was much stronger than the previous Black Knight. Kai turned to look at her companions and said to Chen Ying'er, "Don't make a move. The next floor mainly depends on your strength. The rest of you, follow me." As she spoke, Kai's figure flashed, and she was already rushing towards the light element magician in the white magic robe. As an assassin, she was obviously the most suitable candidate to fight against a magician. Han Yu, Yang Wenjiao, and Duan Yi could clearly feel that their spiritual power had been greatly increased in this place full of the aura of light. The three of them immediately used their aura skills and attached them to Kai. Although Yang Wenjiao was the punishment knight, he didn't rush out. His injuries had not healed. If the opponent in front of him was stronger than the previous one, it would be useless for him to rush out. Following behind Kai was Wang Yuanyuan. A strong murderous aura instantly rose behind her, and a layer of red light could be faintly seen soaring into the sky, condensing into an illusory figure that was identical to Wang Yuanyuan's. Wang Yuanyuan's murderous aura was very different from Kai Er's. Kai Er's murderous aura was filled with the aura of death, while Wang Yuanyuan's was filled with the aura of blood. One was attached to the attribute itself, while the other was forged from killing thousands of soldiers and horses. The two murderous auras at this time actually seemed to complement each other. Under the eruption of their full strength, this place that was originally filled with the aura of light and holiness was actually stirred up by their soaring murderous aura. The light element magician moved. Just as Kai and the others took the first step, the magician's body had already floated up from the ground. A golden staff appeared in his hand, and as he pointed it in front of him, a layer of wave-like golden halo rippled out. Kai carried Long Haochen on her back, so she couldn't directly enter the state of invisibility, but her speed was the fastest in the glimmer of dawn. The moment she charged, she was already speeding up. Previously, she was less than 200 meters away from the light element magician, and with her speed, she only needed to flash twice to reach him. However, just as she was about 100 meters away, the gentle halo had already blocked in front of her. It felt as if a thin veil had fallen on her body. Rushing into the golden halo, Kai was shocked to find that her speed had been completely reduced, and she was even directly bound. Her entire body became sluggish. A dense murderous gray light immediately erupted from the death god's scythe. As expected of a divine weapon, that unknown light element magic was instantly shattered in front of the death god's scythe's sharpness. Just as Kai was about to move forward, the shattered golden light wrapped around her like silk and wrapped around her body. Wang Yuanyuan faced the same problem as Kai. When they were about 100 meters away from the light element magician, they wanted to move forward, but they couldn't even move an inch. At this moment, a distorted light swept through the air, directly blasting towards the light element magician. The Lord of the Evil Eye was showing its might. The light element magician slowly raised its head, and a powerful soul wave suddenly spread out from its body. One could see that under the cloak was a pair of golden soul fire pulsating in the eye socket. Before the Lord of the Evil Eye's spiritual attack could reach the light element magician, it was dispersed by the powerful soul power. It didn't cause any damage to the light element magician at all. He waved his staff again, and a low chanting sound could be heard. At this moment, the knight had already reached Kai and Wang Yuanyuan's side. They didn't know what magic the light element magician had used, but the golden light also blocked their path forward, and they couldn't advance at all. This is a level 9 light element magic, divine binding. Yang Wenjiao suddenly shouted, "But, wasn't this magic lost long ago? Why did it appear here? Damn it, and it's instant. Level 9 magic. Furthermore, it didn't go through the chanting process. This was already close to the level of a forbidden spell. No wonder they couldn't break through. If it was only a level 8 magic, with the death god's scythe, Kai wouldn't have been blocked so thoroughly." The light element magician's incantation continued. Everyone knew that once the incantation was completed, it would be extremely difficult for them to resist. A magician's attack power was far above that of a warrior's, not to mention that this light element magician had appeared behind the Black Knight. Although this place was filled with a comfortable aura of light, it was clear that this stage was much more difficult than the previous ones. Especially, how were they going to break through the divine binding in front of them? At this moment, Kai suddenly shouted, "Yuan Yuan!" Wang Yuanyuan rushed into the golden light at almost the same time as Kai. Hearing Kai-er's call, the two of them looked at each other and understood each other. Although Kai-er had just recovered her memories, her lost memories didn't disappear because of the recovery of her previous memories. Instead, they completely fused together. Thus, the tacit understanding between them didn't disappear. 1, 2. Kai began to count slowly, her gaze fixed on the light magician from beginning to end. Apart from Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi, everyone from the Light of Dawn monster hunters quietened down and stopped attacking the barrier. This was tacit understanding. Without needing Kai to say anything, they knew what Kai wanted to do. 3. Do it, Kai shouted. Under the shocked gazes of Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi, Wang Yuanyuan's body suddenly shone with a silver light. In the next instant, she disappeared into thin air. When she reappeared, she was already in front of the light element magician. An orange-red and scarlet sanguine storm suddenly erupted with an unparalleled bloodlust. A pitch-black crack instantly appeared in front of the light element magician. This was the strongest skill of Sanguine Storm, Dimensional Storm. It should be noted that Sanguine Storm had evolved into an epic weapon in the midst of slaughter. Its power was worlds apart from its original form. The dense light elements in front of it were instantly split apart, and the terrifying Dimensional Storm filled the 9th grade light element defensive spell with a shrill whine. In the face of the outbreak of Sanguine Storm, the space inside the 9th grade spell seemed to be cut into countless pieces. This was Wang Yuanyuan's accumulated attack, a perfect combination of Sanguine Storm and the spiritual stove of the spatial gate. Not only was its offensive power extremely tyrannical, but it was also superior in its suddenness. The power of the spiritual stove of the spatial gate was to open a door in another place within sight and then teleport Wang Yuanyuan there. It was different from ordinary teleportation. As long as her eyes could see the location of the spatial gate, then no matter what was in between, it would not be able to hinder her teleportation. Although the spiritual stove of the spatial gate did not fuse with other spiritual stoves, Wang Yuanyuan had been killing enemies in the southeast fortress for a long time, and this spiritual stove had evolved 3 times. Whether it was the teleportation distance, the number of times, or the ability to resist interference during teleportation, it was already extremely powerful. The light element magician was obviously a little flustered. He obviously did not expect that these opponents could break through his 9th grade defensive spell in this way. It was because he had absolute confidence in divine binding that he could boldly chant a powerful offensive spell there. As long as this spell was completed, he was confident that he could defeat all the humans in front of him. However, Wang Yuanyuan's sudden arrival completely destroyed his thoughts. The terrifying dimensional storm swept over with a thick smell of blood, and he had no choice but to stop the spell that was about to be completed. With a muffled groan, he quickly retreated. At the same time, the staff in his hand burst out with an intense golden light, blocking the baptism of the dimensional storm. The attack was blocked, but his staff was instantly twisted into pieces. At the same time, the divine binding was also removed because of the staff's destruction. Kai led her companions and charged in brazenly. The light element magician was very impressive. Faced with such a disadvantageous situation as he retreated, he pointed both his hands at Wang Yuanyuan, who was closest to him. Layers of golden halos suddenly rose from under Wang Yuanyuan's feet. Holy Binding. This was a 7th grade light element control spell. He was actually able to instantly cast it despite the backlash of his previous chanting spell. It was clear how deep his understanding of light element magic was. At the same time, his body suddenly moved backward. A strange scene appeared. The statue of Electrolux, which should have been at the end of its path, actually seemed to move backward with him. He tried to put as much distance between them as possible. At the same time, he was still chanting, and the speed of his chanting was getting faster and faster. The spiritual wings on her back flapped, and Kai-Er had already caught up to him like a gray lightning bolt. The Grim Reaper scythe in her hand carried a shocking long rainbow as it slashed down. The attack power of a magician was undoubtedly extremely powerful, but their defensive power was inversely proportional to their attack power. Wang Yuanyuan's surprise attack was extremely crucial. Although it did not succeed in one strike, it was equivalent to breaking the divine binding and ending the spell that was about to be completed. Previously, when Kai-Er was counting, it was to calculate the time that the light element magician would take to complete the spell. He wanted Wang Yuanyuan to interrupt him before he could finish his incantation. The backlash of magic was an extremely dangerous thing. Any magician who was in the process of casting a spell could possibly experience a backlash if the spell was interrupted. The stronger the spell, the more severe the backlash. Especially when the spell was nearing completion, the stronger the backlash. No matter how powerful this light element magician was, he was still affected by the backlash of his own spell. At the same time, he did not have any time to catch his breath. Kai-Er was not going to give him the chance to complete another high-level spell. However, what Kai-Er did not expect was that the speed of the light element magician's spell release was even faster than she had expected. Just as her Grim Reaper scythe was about to hit the opponent, the light element magician completed another spell. There was a burst of light, and the Grim Reaper scythe suddenly stopped in the air. Immediately after, a powerful force exploded from the front. It was an almost unstoppable force. The light was gentle, but it had an undeniably powerful impact. It did not have any damaging effects. However, even with the sharpness of Kai-Er's Grim Reaper scythe, it was unable to dispel this seemingly gentle holy light impact. This spell was called Holy Sacrifice. It was a life-saving spell that was released by burning one's own life force. The one in front of her was naturally burning his soul fire. Although he was only a holy guard guarding this place, he had his own pride. He would not allow himself to be defeated like this. As long as he used the power of holy sacrifice to push back all the opponents in front of him and give him time to chant the spell, he was still confident that he could defeat these humans. Just as Kai-Er frowned, thinking that she no longer had a chance to defeat this light element magician, suddenly, a strange feeling came from in front of her. A gentle orange-red light quietly surrounded her body. The intense white light released by holy sacrifice hit Kai-Er's body, but actually slid past her body. The irresistible impact from before had completely disappeared. The members of the Bright Glimmer of Dawn Demon Hunt Squad, who were sent flying by the sacred sacrifice, were shocked to see that the orange radiance was actually released from the dead Long Houchen's left arm. The dignified and solemn orange radiance completely surpassed the radiant aura of the sacred sacrifice, as if it was a superior being, forming an absolute suppression. Although Kai-Er could not see what was happening, with her battle intelligence, how could she let go of such a good opportunity? With a flash, countless figures of Kai-Er took the opportunity to cut in, completely surrounding the light element magician. In that instant, it was as if thousands of Grim Reaper scythe were slashing at the light element magician. Thousand Shadow Slash was an attack that Kai-Er had modified from the original spiritual cauldron of Thousand Strikes after becoming a chosen of the Grim Reaper. Although the spiritual stove of Thousand Strike had already fused with a part of the spiritual stove of Samsara, Kai-Er had long since comprehended its usage. Combined with her own physique as a god's chosen one, the might of this strike was even greater than before. Casting holy sacrifice was already the last resort of a light element magician. If even this couldn't buy her time, then even if he was a powerful warlock god from ancient times, he would not be able to escape. With an ear-piercing shattering sound, the light element magician disappeared. Only a ray of golden light fused into the eternal melody on Kai-Er's chest. At the same time, a clear voice rang out, "Holy Guard number 7 submits to you." As she floated to the ground, Kai Er's gaze was somewhat dull. She subconsciously looked at Long Houchen's arm, which was wrapped around her neck and secured by a chain. Tears immediately welled up in her eyes. It was the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield. The orange-red light just now was clearly released by the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield. Turning around abruptly, Kai looked at her companions and shouted, "Did you guys see that? Did you guys see that? He didn't die, Long Houchen didn't die. He will definitely come back to life, definitely." At this point, her hands tightly hugged Long Houchen's arm in front of her, her delicate body trembling violently. No one knew why the power of the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield was triggered. Long Houchen was already dead, so it was definitely not activated by him. However, the light emitted by the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield undoubtedly gave them a lot of confidence. It was as if Long Houchen was not dead. From entering the Tower of Eternity until now, it had not even been half an hour. They had already passed through 2 stages and reached the end of the 3rd floor. The strength of the Light of Dawn monster hunters was undoubtedly displayed. One must know that the defenders who had passed through these 2 stages were all Type 9 powerhouses. Even if it was just an elementary Type 9, it was still a genuine Type 9. In fact, the reason why Long Houchen dared to bring his companions into the depths of the demons to fight was because he had a lot of confidence. Although the members of the Bright Glimmer of Dawn Demon Hunt Squad were generally at the 7th or 5th step, each of them had a spiritual stove, and each of them had powerful equipment and innate talents. Compared to the Type 8 powerhouses of the same profession, they were not inferior. If they had not met an opponent like the Demon Emperor who was completely unstoppable, if they had not fallen into the trap set by the Demon Emperor, even if they were faced with a desperate situation, they would have had the opportunity to escape. Now it was a little too late to say anything. Long Houchen was still dead after all. However, on this path of his resurrection, every demon hunter of the Light of Dawn monster hunters was releasing their own brilliance. Perhaps this group of monster hunters was still very powerful after losing Long Houchen, but without Long Houchen, the Light of Dawn had also lost its own soul. With great difficulty, Kai suppressed the agitation of her emotions. "Everyone, rest where you are and recover your spiritual energy." The ascending passage ahead had already opened, and a golden beam of light shone in front of the Electrolux statue. As long as they stepped into this beam of light, they would enter the 4th floor of the Tower of Eternity. But at this time, no matter how anxious Kai was, there was nothing more important than letting her companions recover their strength. Since they started their mission in Modu until now, no one had rested. The 3rd floor's assessment was already so difficult, then the 4th floor would only be even more difficult. Without a good state, how could they pass the 4th floor's test? Sharpening the axe would not delay the work of cutting firewood. Only by meeting the next challenge in their best state could they better get through the following difficulties. Lin Xin and Sima Xian were also called here. The second half of the 3rd floor of the Tower of Eternity was full of the aura of light, which was very helpful for them to recover their spiritual energy. Even Lin Xin, who was a fire elemental, would be much better practicing in the light elemental world than in the dark elemental world. Yang Wenzhao and Duan Yi sat at the back. The two looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. As the best of the younger generation of Knights Templars, after being scolded by Long Houchen, they had completely lost the idea of committing suicide. Originally, they thought that among the Light of Dawn monster hunters, Long Houchen and Kai were not as good as them, but they were stronger than the others. But now it seemed that this idea was obviously wrong. Judging from the strength shown by the members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters, even if the two of them joined forces, they might not be able to win against one of them. However, Yang Wenzhao and Duan Yi did not have a decadent mentality because of this. Instead, this stimulation greatly stimulated their fighting spirit. Now that their injuries had not recovered, they were secretly holding back a force in their hearts. No matter what, they had to work hard to become stronger in the future. Long Houchen was right, there was more than one throne of God. There were at least 3 more throne of God waiting for them to fight for. This time, the rest time was longer. After a full hour, everyone opened their eyes one after another. Except for Lin Xin, who had not yet fully recovered from the backlash of the Blue Fire Phoenix spiritual stove, everyone else's strength had been restored to its peak state. Even if it was Lin Xin, as long as he did not use the spiritual stove, it would not be a problem for him to just cast magic. Kyra stood up with Long Houchen on her back. Her face was still a little pale. Strangely, the Grim Reaper's shadow that she had released did not disappear even during the process of her cultivation. It had always been suspended in mid-air. Moreover, after defeating Holy Guard No. 7, the shadow seemed to have become more and more clear. Even the Light of Dawn monster hunters could only vaguely guess that this should be an ability belonging to the Grim Reaper's favored, but they did not know what it was exactly. This was unique to Kyra, and she had never used it before. Kyra said in a deep voice, "In the first 3 floors of the Tower of Eternity, we faced the test of Holy Guard No. 12 to Holy Guard No. 7. From their numbers, we can see that we still have to face 6 more Holy Guard. At the 3rd floor, the strength of the Holy Guards has reached the 9th rank, so the test later will definitely be more difficult. And the Holy Guards that we have already met are fire, water, wind, earth, darkness, and light. These are the 6 major elemental attributes. The strongest are naturally darkness and light. Among the known attributes, there are also the space attribute and a few rare attributes that have not appeared. However, these attributes added up are not enough for 6 type. Therefore, in the next test, it is very likely that we will meet the same attributes as the previous Holy Guard. Later, I will still be the main attacker. Inger, you have to prepare for the 4th floor. If possible, we will pass the 4th floor test with you as the main attacker. Then, we will directly enter the 5th floor." Okay. Chen Inger agreed without hesitation and nodded to Kyra. She did not participate in the battle on the 3rd floor at all, and did not consume any energy at all. She was currently in the best condition among everyone. Moreover, she was also a favored, and the title of Soul Saintess was not for nothing. In some cases, her strength and role even exceeded that of Long Houchen and Kyra. One by one, the figures stepped into the golden light and quietly disappeared in the illusory light. The 4th floor of the Tower of Eternity. This was a spacious place, different from the vast sea of skeletons at the beginning of the 3rd floor. Upon entering the 4th floor, there was a feeling of emptiness all around. The giant pillars on both sides were neatly arranged. It made everyone feel a little absent-minded that they did not feel like they had arrived at a higher place, but returned to the 1st floor. This place was very similar to the 1st floor they had been to before. At the far end, they could faintly see the blurry figure of the statue of Electrolux. Chen Inger walked to the side of Kyra and whispered, "Should I start now?" Kyra nodded. The chanting time of a summoner's high-level incantation was the longest. Now that the opponent had not appeared yet, it was just enough time for her to start chanting. Chen Inger directly sat down on the spot, and Madul Piglet jumped out of her arms. A soft milky white light emitted from her body and lit up all the elixirs on the Soul Saintess garment. The clear and crisp chanting of the incantation sounded. Chen Inger held her hands in her heart, and the crystal ball slowly appeared in the chanting of the incantation. A strange soul fluctuation suddenly spread from her body. The others quickly stood in position and surrounded her in the center. With the chanting of the incantation, Chen Inger gradually floated up from the ground. The Soul Saintess garment emitted a magnificent brilliance, and each of the magical beasts embroidered on it seemed to have come to life, running quickly on the Saintess garment. The rich spiritual fluctuation continued to rise at an alarming rate. Yang Wenjiao looked at Chen Inger in a daze. At this moment, it was as if he did not recognize his fiancée. Was this still the little girl who followed behind him with a runny nose? She actually had such powerful strength? At this moment, the strength of the spiritual fluctuation emitted from Chen Yinger's body had clearly reached the level of rank 8, and it was still increasing at an extremely fast speed. Although Yang Wenjiao did not know what kind of magic Chen Yinger was going to use, he understood that her strength had definitely surpassed his. A sense of loss uncontrollably appeared in his heart, and the corner of his mouth unconsciously brought out a trace of bitterness. It seemed that he really had to work hard. Just at this time, just 50 meters in front of them, 2 rays of light simultaneously descended from the sky. Those were 2 huge pillars of light, each with a diameter of more than 5 meters, one blue, the other red. Within the pillars of light, 2 tall skeletons appeared at the same time. The intense soul fire was also pulsating. The soul of the strong. This time, there were actually 2 holy guards who were here to assess them? Everyone's expression could not help but change. From the color of the 2 pillars of light, it could be seen that their attributes were fire and ice, the same as the 2 holy guards on the first floor. The only difference was that they appeared at the same time. And without a doubt, as examiners of the 4th floor, their cultivation was definitely not inferior to the 2 holy guards on the 3rd floor. 1 9th-level powerhouse and 2 9th-level powerhouses, that was a completely different concept. This was not 1 + 1 = 2, it was definitely greater than 2. Moreover, these 2 were close combat, while the other was a mage. However, in contrast to Holy Guard number 11 and number 12. This time, the fire skeleton was a mage, wearing a crimson-red magic robe, while the ice skeleton was a warrior, wearing an ice-blue armor, holding an ice-blue greatsword in each hand. It was obvious that they had been drawn here by Chen Yinger's spell. Although this level seemed to be empty, they were being tested by 2 holy guards at the same time. They were both ice and fire. The pillars of light disappeared, and the ice warrior's figure flashed like lightning, charging towards Kair and the rest with an indomitable aura. The fire mage raised the staff in his hand, murmuring a spell. He could clearly see that in the tunnel ahead, the red and blue areas were divided into 2 distinct areas. A huge pressure came crashing down on them. At this moment, almost everyone had the same thought in their minds. If only their leader was still here. Facing such a strong enemy, they really needed a leader who could block the enemy's attack. If Long Houchen was still alive, then he would definitely hold the Sun Moon Divine Snail shield to block the Ice Warrior's attack, and the others could calmly display their abilities. No matter how strong Kair's attack was, she did not have the ability to attract the enemy like Long Houchen's Saint's spiritual stove, and her frontal defense could not block the powerful attack of a 9th-level powerhouse. Zhang Fangfang stepped forward without flinching, blocking the front. However, Han Yu had already surpassed his position in the next moment. This was the first time since climbing the Tower of Eternity that the team did not have a tacit understanding, but Zhang Fangfang immediately understood and stood beside Han Yu. In terms of strength, Zhang Fangfang and Han Yu were evenly matched, each having their own strength. In terms of defense, Han Yu was definitely not stronger than Zhang Fangfang. However, he was a true member of the Light of Dawn Monster Hunters, and he had the existence of the Soul Chain. A huge blue fireball flew out, heading straight for the Ice Warrior. Lin Xian made his move. Facing an opponent of the Ice element as a fire mage, he was obviously the main force. The high temperature of the Flame of the Heart caused a series of distortions in the air, and under the mental lockdown, it arrived in front of the Ice Warrior in the next moment. The Ice Warrior's cold blue soul fire did not have the slightest fluctuation, and as if he was stepping on ice, he suddenly made a sliding motion. The huge sword in his right hand pierced the air. The temperature plummeted, and a strong pulling force suddenly appeared from his thrusting heavy sword, pulling the large fireball to the side. Then, he raised the sword in his left hand, and instantly, a meter-wide ice-blue blade of light shot out from the ground, heading straight for the people from the Light of Dawn. What was even more strange was that, after the sword in his left hand completed the attack, the large fireball that Lin Xian had released was flung away by the sword in his right hand, exploding in the distance. Lin Xian's expression changed. When the Ice Warrior raised the sword in his left hand to release the half-moon slash, he had simultaneously cut off the connection between him and the magic, which prevented the large fireball from exploding. The ice-blue half-moon slash continued to grow in size as it moved forward. Before the attack even reached them, the temperature of the air around them had already plummeted. Lin Xian quickly took a big step forward and arrived behind Han Yu. Intense blue flames gushed out from his body, and his eyes flickered with a divine light. Immediately, a large cloud of blue flames attached themselves to Han Yu's body, making him look like a fire god that had descended. Naturally, Lin Xian was not the only one who attacked. Zhang Fangfang, Yang Wenjiao, and Duan Yi also attacked with their weapons at the same time. Blinding golden light flashed and intercepted the ice-blue light. They were very clever when they launched their attack. When the blade of light left their weapons, they immediately cut off the connection between it and the weapon to prevent it from being affected by the energy flow. However, the ice-blue blade of light was like a hot knife through butter. When the blade of light collided with it, it could only create layers of icy mist, but it did not weaken its momentum in the slightest. Just as the ice-blue half-moon slash was about to land on Han Yu's body, a strong light flashed from both sides. The left side was silver, while the right side was purple. It was Wang Yuanyuan's giant Soul Divine Shield's sky-splitting cannon, and Sima Xian's purple godly thunder cannon. The power of the two heavy cannons was indeed powerful. Amidst the violent explosion, the ice-blue half-moon slash was blasted into pieces of ice, and stopped in its track. Han Yu blocked the attack with his shield, and shattered the remaining ice blade. Chapter 226. It was as though they had combined everyone's strength to block this Type 9 powerhouse's attack. However, at this moment, the Ice Warrior soared into the sky and pounced towards them. Without a doubt, once he charged into the crowd, no one would be able to block his attack. Compared to the Dark Knight from before, this Ice Warrior might not be much stronger, but one should not forget that there was still a fire magician far behind him, giving everyone a strong mental pressure. Just as the Ice Warrior was about to pounce into the Light of Dawn Monster Hunter's formation, his body suddenly froze in midair. Then, he gave up on pouncing forward and forcefully twisted his body in midair, landing sideways. At the same time, he crossed his swords in front of his chest. A ray of gray light that looked as if it was going to tear through the sky swept across and ruthlessly struck the crossed swords of the Ice Warrior. Ding! The crisp sound of the collision reverberated in the fourth level of the Tower of Eternity. The powerful Ice Warrior was actually sent flying 40 meters away by this attack. He only stopped when his body collided with a stone pillar that supported the fourth level. There were obvious cracks on his pair of icy blue swords. If not for the support of his powerful spiritual power, they would have been destroyed. Kai stood there, the Grim Reaper scythe in her hand slowly descending, a cold light flashing in her eyes. She wasn't strong enough to block a Guardian Knight head-on. Against such a strong enemy, she could only rely on her tyrannical attack power. The first of the Grim Reaper's 7 ultimate skills, Death's Demise, was finally on display. Compared to when she had lost her memory, the power of this Death's Demise was at least twice as strong. The Ice Skeleton was a powerful holy guard with ancient battle techniques. But when faced with this attack, it had no way of dodging or using any trick. It was forcefully sent flying by Kai, and its weapon was almost destroyed. One could only imagine how terrifying this attack was. From returning to the Tower of Eternity to coming here, Kai had never used her full strength. She knew that the test that awaited her would only get more and more difficult. Before obtaining the inheritance of Electrolux and reviving Long Houchen, she must not fall. Therefore, she had been borrowing the strength of her companions, while her own strength was constantly accumulating. She had recovered her memories and fused them together, but she was still not used to the power of a god's chosen. She was trying to assimilate this great power through constant battles. Normal attacks were no longer enough to stop the Ninth Order Ice Warrior. Once he charged in, even if everyone could defeat him as fast as they could, as long as he broke Chen Inger's incantation, Kyr and the rest would definitely lose this test. Just as the Ice Warrior was sent flying, the Fire Mage and Chen Inger finished casting their spells almost at the same time. Door after door of light lit up behind Chen Inger. A total of 6 doors of light shone brightly at the same time. Each door was different. Red, blue, yellow, green, gold, black. They were the colors of the 6 elements. Amidst the valiant roars, 6 enormous earth dragons simultaneously walked out of the door of light, surrounding the members of the Bright Glimmer of Dawn Demon Hunt Squad, with Chen Inger in the center of the array. Spreading her spiritual wings, Chen Inger's body flew up to 3 meters from the ground and stopped in midair. She held the crystal ball in her hand and faced the Fire Mage in the distance. The 6-colored magic hexagram formation flashed. Every demon hunter in the area felt the elemental waves of all attributes rising rapidly. At this time, the entire 4th floor of the Tower of Eternity had become a world of red. Golden red fireballs appeared around the Fire Mage's body, quickly covering every corner of his body like a wall of fire, leaving no gap. Be careful, this is the real meteor shower. It's not at the level of a forbidden spell, but it's almost there. Lin Xian was shocked. This level of fire magic was enough to wipe out an army on the battlefield. Although the space inside the Tower of Eternity was spacious, they had no chance of dodging such an omnidirectional magic attack. Roar! 6 roars sounded at the same time, and 6 different colored breaths were spat out from the mouths of the Earth Dragons. These Earth Dragons were all level 9 magical beasts, which was equivalent to a level 8 human powerhouse. The crystal ball in Chen Inger's hand became the intersection point of the 6th breath. Suddenly, her crystal ball turned into 6 colors. Go! Chen Inger shouted. Suddenly, a 6-colored light shot straight at the Fire Mage in the distance. The Fire Mage waved his staff forward almost at the same time, and the meteor shower covered the entire space and bombarded them with unparalleled momentum. At this time, the Ice Warrior had already dodged behind the pillar and disappeared. Layers of defensive light shields were released from everyone's body, but to their surprise, no matter how hard they tried, the defensive magic they released could not take shape. They directly dissipated in the formation formed by the 6 Earth Dragons. How big could the light beam from the crystal ball be? It was only slightly bigger than a normal person's fist. What about the meteor shower? That was an overwhelming number of them. For a moment, even Kyr was nervous. But now, she could only trust Chen Inger. Because she clearly saw that when Chen Inger released the 6-colored light beam, her eyes were filled with confidence. The 6-colored light beam collided with the meteor shower. At the moment when the 2 seemingly different kinds of magic came into contact, everyone in the light of dawn had a strange feeling. At this moment, it was as if everything had stopped. That ferocious meteor shower actually stopped in midair just like that. The 6-colored light beam was like a small stone thrown into a sea of fire, splashing a circle of gentle ripples. The 108 spiritual pills on Chen Inger's soul saint garment suddenly emitted a dazzling brilliance. She made a downward gesture with her fair and tender hands, and suddenly, the 6-colored light beam on the crystal ball sprinkled down and turned into a 6-colored light shield. With the 6 Earth Dragons as the fulcrum, it enveloped everyone. In the next moment, time returned to normal. The meteor shower was still coming, but the central part of the fire beam had completely disappeared. At this moment, it looked more like a huge ring of fire. Although it had bombarded the Light of Dawn members, the central part of the meteor that should have hit them had already disappeared. Violent rumbles resounded in the surroundings, and the terrifying fire elements caused the air to distort violently. However, the fiery meteor shower, which had lost its central location, only bombarded the empty space around the Glimmer of Dawn Demon Hunt Squad. When the blazing flames came into contact with the six-colored barrier released by Chen Inger, they melted away like ice and snow, not having the slightest effect. What was even more shocking was that the six-colored light beam that melted the meteor shower did not disappear. Instead, it was still shooting straight at the fire mage in the distance. Back then, Lin Xian suffered a great loss because of this move from Chen Inger. This time, when Chen Inger used it again, it was much more powerful than when she sparred with Lin Xian. It was obvious that she had held back that time. The most amazing thing about the six-colored light beam was that it could instantly disintegrate any magical elements it encountered, and its power was not affected. The fire mage, who had just released a meteor shower, was shocked to see the six-colored light heading straight for him. He hurriedly set up a thick flame shield in front of him. At this moment, an ice-blue figure appeared in front of him. Facing the six-colored light beam, she crossed her swords and slashed out. Pfff! The six-colored light beam landed on the ice warrior, and his body froze instantly. His powerful 9th-grade ice element attack was actually useless against the six-colored light beam. His entire body shone with 6 dazzling colors as he stood there like a dazzling statue. Elemental Cage. Chen Inger's expression was calm. At this moment, she did not have the slightest trace of her usual playful appearance. Her right index finger lightly tapped on the crystal ball, and a crisp sound echoed in the vast space. Elements disintegrate. A terrifying scene unfolded. The 6 elements representing water, fire, earth, wind, light, and darkness on the six-colored ice warrior suddenly turned into 6 colors and scattered in all directions. The moment they separated, an indescribable attack appeared on the ice warrior's body. Clang! The ice warrior's body actually shattered just like that. It was first split into 6 pieces, and then it was turned into powder by the black hole formed after the 6 elements separated. Just the power of this attack was already equivalent to the 9th grade. However, after launching this attack, Chen Inger's face was obviously a little pale. The 108 elixirs on her soul saint garment shone even more brilliantly. She suddenly opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood on the crystal ball in front of her. The 6 earth dragons simultaneously shook and once again spat out their breaths on the crystal ball. Go! Chen Inger shouted. Suddenly, another 6-colored light beam shot out and headed straight for the fire mage in the distance. At the same time when she launched this second attack, Kai had already dragged her scythe of the god of death along the ground. The soul flames in the fire mage's eye sockets violently throbbed. Facing the 6-colored light beam, even a powerhouse like him couldn't help but be dazed for a moment. Even with the magic inherited from ancient times, he still couldn't understand what kind of ability Chen Inger was using. He could only lay down layers of fire defenses in front of him in an attempt to exhaust the power of the 6-colored light beam. However, the 6-colored light seemed to be a completely invincible existence. The thick layers of fire defenses were directly ignored by it. The 6-colored light beam pierced through and landed on the fire mage's body, turning its 6 colors as well. This time, Chen Inger naturally didn't need to use her elemental decomposition again. Kai followed right after, her scythe of the god of death carrying a sparkling gray radiance, ending the life of this fire mage. Holy Guard 6 and Holy Guard 5 returned to the eternal melody. Everyone from the light of dawn was completely dumbfounded. When they saw that their opponents on the 4th floor were 2 Type 9 powerhouses, their hearts sank. In their opinion, it would be extremely difficult to pass this stage. It would be very difficult to complete it without paying a huge price. Who would have thought that Chen Inger's full strength would be so terrifying? She practically relied on her own strength to turn the situation around and forcefully defeat the 2 powerhouses of ice and fire? Chen Inger's delicate body slowly landed on the ground. Her face was already as pale as paper, and she could not help but spit out another mouthful of blood. Her delicate body swayed, and she fell into Yang Wenjiao's arms. Before she fainted, she muttered, "The rest is up to you guys. Even though she was the Soul Saintess, and even though she was wearing the only godly equipment in the Soul Temple, she was still a Type 7 summoner. With the strength of a Type 7, she was able to take out a Type 9 powerhouse, and then completely suppress another one. This was no longer exceeding her limits, but completely overdrawing on her own potential. In order to increase the chances of reviving Long Houchen, Chen Inger could not care less. Her leader had done so much for her, and even if she lost her life here, she would not regret it. The elemental cage was a spell that Chen Inger had invented. In reality, this spell had already surpassed the scope of summoning spells. It was an inspiration that Chen Inger had found from Haoyue's chaos elemental stripping. In order to truly control this spell, as if it was part of her own body, she would have to wait until her cultivation had risen to the level 9. With her current cultivation, she could actually only cast the elemental cage once, and its power should not have been as strong as before. However, Chen Inger overdrew on her own potential to forcefully unleash the strongest power of the elemental cage. Not only did she resist the attack of the fire mage, but she also used the elemental cage to directly kill the ice warrior. Elemental decomposition was the next ability of the elemental cage. If Chen Inger had not overdrawn on her own potential and life force, she would not have been able to use it at all. However, she still forcefully used it, and one could imagine the backlash that she suffered. In addition, she had forcefully activated the elemental cage again, and this time, it could be said that her source was injured. In reality, the elemental cage was not an invincible skill. It could be used against the 6 types of elemental magic. It only had a strong restrictive ability, but did not have a strong offensive ability. Moreover, this restriction could only last for a very short period of time. In other words, after Chen Inger restricted the Ice Warrior, she could not kill the Ice Warrior within the duration of the elemental cage. Then, once he recovered, he would not suffer any damage. And with the defense of the level 9 Ice Warrior, even if Kyra attacked with all her might, she might not be able to kill him in one attack. This was the reason why Chen Inger desperately cast the elemental decomposition. The fire mage was a mage, so naturally, his defense could not be compared to the ice warrior. Moreover, Kyra's response was timely enough. This allowed them to succeed in one fell swoop and pass the 4th floor's test. To consecutively complete the self-created skill of the soul bestowal 3 times, Chen Inger only succeeded with the support of the huge spiritual power of the Soul Saint Garment. However, the spiritual power provided by the Soul Saint Garment could only be used within the limits of her body's endurance. If it exceeded the limits of her body, she would eventually explode and die. Speaking of which, she still had to thank Lin Xian's Forest Boa body forging pill. With this pill, her external spiritual power had increased by more than 10,000, and the toughness of her body had greatly increased. Otherwise, she would not have survived that kind of burden just now. Even so, the heavily injured Chen Inger would not be able to recover in a short period of time. It was impossible for her to continue participating in the following battles. The 6 Earth Dragons had already returned to their respective light gates, and the light gates also disappeared. Madul anxiously jumped around Chen Inger. As a natal summoned beast, it could clearly feel that Chen Inger was currently weak. Kyra had already turned around and stood beside Chen Inger. She silently looked at Chen Inger for a moment, then took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Yang Wenjiao, you stay here and take care of Inger. The rest of you, follow me to the 5th floor." Yang Wenjiao was currently using light magic to heal Chen Inger's injuries and nodded when he heard her words. Although it was extremely painful, he could completely understand the reason why Chen Inger wanted to do this. If it was him, as long as he had the ability, he would not be stingy. The passage leading to the 5th floor was right in front of them. The 4th floor's test seemed very simple, and the speed at which they passed was even faster than the 3rd floor. But in fact, if it wasn't for Chen Inger's strong burst of power, it would not have been so easy for them to pass under the hands of the ice and fire holy guards. If Long Houchen was here, it would have been fine, as he could block the attacks from the front. But now, what they lacked the most was a powerful guardian that could block the opponent's attack. What would they face on the 5th floor? Kyr had already used the spiritual stove of Samsara's 7 ultimate reaper once a day, but she had no intention of stopping to rest. She led her companions to the end of the 5th floor. They walked into the teleportation light, the 5th floor of the Tower of Eternity. With a flash of light, Kyr, Wang Yuan, Sima Xian, Lin Xin, Han Yu, Zhang Fangfang, and Duan Yi appeared in a new world at the same time. Unlike the previous 4 floors, when they just walked into the 5th floor, they suddenly felt a huge pressure like a mountain squeezing their bodies. Under this heavy pressure, each of them had to release their own spiritual power to relax a little. Kyr stood there and did not move. She looked forward with a burning gaze. The 5th floor of the Tower of Eternity looked no different from the previous 4th floor. It was empty, and the stone pillars on both sides were neatly arranged, extending all the way inside. What was different from the 4th floor was that they could not see far this time. They could only see about 50 meters in a straight line. Looking further, it was a hazy light and shadow. Kyr said coldly, "The 4th floor is ice and fire. It's the same as the 1st floor, but the professions of warriors and sorcerers have been swapped. Then on the 5th floor, it's likely that we will face earth and wind. Everyone be careful." After passing through the 3rd and 4th floor, they had lost the Soul Saint Chen Inger. At the same time, Lin Xin, who had displayed the blue fire phoenix, would also have his strength greatly reduced. At this point, they could only fight with all their might. However, the test of each floor of the Tower of Eternity was more difficult than the previous floor. What would they encounter here? They would only know when the opponent appeared. "You guys stay here. I'll lure out the opponent of this floor." As she spoke, Kyr held the Grim Reaper scythe in her hand and slowly moved forward. As she moved forward, she looked up at the gray light shadow that was still flashing above her head. Compared to the previous time on the 3rd floor, the light shadow was a little dim and illusory. Only the core was brighter. After passing through the 4th floor, she could have let everyone rest for a while, but she did not do so. If they rested, she was afraid that the Grim Reaper scythe would disappear. Only in the state of battle could the existence of this light shadow be maintained. Kyr did not walk fast, but every step she took gave people a feeling of illusory. Obviously, it was a special footwork exclusive to assassins. The pressure in the air seemed to be continuously increasing, and just as Kyr took her 10th step, suddenly, a yellow pillar of light fell from the sky, and a tall yellow figure appeared in the middle of the pillar of light. The huge yellow skeleton was more than 4 meters tall, and looked much stronger than the Black Knight from before. There was a giant hammer in each of its hands. The moment it appeared, the surrounding air suddenly became heavy. It was an earth element warrior. This time, only one examiner appeared, and not 2 holy guards appeared at the same time. However, not only did Kyr not relax, but she also became even more nervous. The 5th floor's assessment was definitely more difficult than the 4th floor's assessment, but there was only one examiner, and just as she had expected, it was an earth element warrior. However, would the assessment be so easy? The next moment, the earth element warrior told them the content of the assessment on the 5th floor of the Tower of Eternity. The instant the yellow light around the earth element warrior's body disappeared, he stomped his right foot on the ground. All of a sudden, a terrifying shock wave spread out, and a huge earthquake wave rushed towards everyone like a landslide and a tsunami. With Kyr in the lead, the members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters leaped into the air and spread their spiritual wings to avoid the earthquake wave. However, they soon saw that the earthquake wave actually became solid after rushing to their feet. An earthy yellow halo circulated, and a huge suction force came from below. Even Kyr, who had the strongest cultivation base, was instantly pulled back to the ground. The huge suction force pulled their bodies frantically. It was as though they were in mud, and they were sinking rapidly. Domain! Han Yu exclaimed, calling out the ability that the Earth Element Warrior was displaying. That's right, they only had to face one opponent in this round, and it was a rank 9 powerhouse who could display a domain. What was a domain? It was the signature ability of a rank 9 powerhouse. Only when one truly possessed a domain could one become a pinnacle powerhouse. Generally speaking, it was difficult for a rank 9 to possess a domain ability. Everyone's domain would definitely have their own unique characteristics, even for powerhouses of the same attribute. No two people's domains were exactly the same. In their own domain, a rank 9 powerhouse's strength could be unleashed several times, and at the same time, it could greatly restrict the opponent. Generally speaking, having a domain meant that one's spiritual energy was at least 200,000. This Earth Warrior before them might be slightly weaker in terms of equipment, but his combat prowess should be close to the level of the dragon rider demon god Asmodeus. Of course, that was if Asmodeus lost 2 of his 3 heads. The members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters had experienced Chen Hongba's powerful domain in the Soul Temple, but due to the presence of the Soul Saintess, Chen Inger, it had greatly restrained Chen Hongba's abilities. However, they were facing a skeleton warrior with an earth element domain. It could be said that he was definitely stronger than the Ice and Fire Saint Guards combined. The first thing they experienced was the gravity technique and swamp technique that came with the earth element domain. Even if the Earth Warrior did not attack, under the effects of the swamp technique, they would most likely perish here. Furthermore, how could this Earth Warrior be just for show? Activating the domain, the Earth Warrior took a step forward, and his body erupted with a bright radiance. Countless rays of light refracted, and on his body, there was actually a layer of diamond-like crystals. Diamond armor. The Earth element was known for its defense. Without a doubt, this Earth Warrior had amazing attainments in this aspect. He swung the giant hammer in his right hand and headed straight for Kyre. All of a sudden, Kyre let out a shriek, and the ear-piercing sound pierced the Earth Warrior's soul like a sharp needle. The demonic sound poured into his brain. At the same time, her body suddenly became illusory. Under the influence of the demonic sound, the Earth Warrior's swinging of the giant hammer slowed down significantly. Meanwhile, Kyre made use of this moment of delay to lightly touch the giant hammer with the Grim Reaper scythe. She took the opportunity to retreat. However, the Earth Warrior's strength was really terrifying. Kyre only felt 3 huge forces hitting her body consecutively, causing her chest to feel stuffy. However, she still made use of the force of the hammer to retreat to her companions, who were 10 steps away. "Conjoined spiritual enhancement," shouted Kyre. At the same time, she pointed the Grim Reaper scythe at the Grim Reaper in the air. All of a sudden, a monstrous killing intent burst forth from her body. From a certain point of view, an earth element opponent was the most difficult to deal with. The difficulty lay in the fact that the Earth Warrior's defense and strength were extremely strong. Moreover, this person in front of them had the existence of a domain. Even if Chen Inger's combat power was still there, and she used the elemental cage to restrict this Earth Warrior, their attack power might not be able to kill the Earth Warrior in such a short period of time. However, at this moment, a tall figure suddenly appeared in front of Kyre and shouted in a deep voice, "Vice Leader, let me do it." The person who stood in front of Kyre was Sima Xian. When she shouted the conjoined spiritual enhancement, Kyre had already consumed a spiritual enhancement pill. At this moment, the Earth Warrior had already pounced on her again. At this critical moment, it was already too late to change positions. She immediately let go of the Grim Reaper scythe in her hand and pressed both hands on Sima Xian's back. At the same time, behind Kyre, Wang Yuan, Han Yu, Zhang Fangfang, Lin Xian, and Duan Yi connected at almost the same time. The conjoined spiritual enhancement pill that Duan Yi consumed was stuffed directly into his mouth by Lin Xian. The 7 of them instantly merged into one. Sima Xian, who was at the front, raised the vigor pill of light in his hand high above his head. With a loud bang, he forcefully blocked the Earth Warrior's hammer smashing down. The intense vibration caused the 7 conjoined spiritual enhancement people's bodies to shake violently at the same time. On Sima Xian's body, a fiery red light and a gold light shone almost simultaneously. That was the defensive effect of the Crimson Dragon armor and the life-sharing effect of the Soul Chain. In other words, even though he had completed the conjoined spiritual enhancement in an instant, he still suffered from the vibration when he blocked the attack. However, the Vigor Pill of Light was indeed an epic-level weapon. The crushing, and triple explosion power completely exploded on the opponent's hammer. The Earth Warrior was forced to take 2 steps back from the impact. "I'll fight it out with you." Sima Xian's eyes widened and the muscles all over his body expanded rapidly. An incomparably valiant aura suddenly erupted from his body. "Sima, no!" Lin Xian, who was at the back, shouted anxiously. However, Sima Xian acted as if he didn't hear him and directly released his berserk ability. How could he not remember that Lin Xian had reminded him many times not to use his berserk ability under the effects of the conjoined spiritual enhancement pill? This was because once he went berserk, his external spiritual energy would show an explosive effect, and his body's endurance would also increase greatly. However, in this situation, if a large amount of internal spiritual energy was injected into his body, then once the berserk state ended, his body might not be able to withstand it and collapse. However, the current Sima Xian seemed to have completely forgotten about all of this. In an instant, he had completed the berserk transformation, and his entire body had swelled up. His strong muscles forcefully tore apart the priest robe on his body. He punched out with his right fist and brazenly hammered the Vigor Pill of Light that rebounded back. At the same time, he suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground. A surging purple light burst out from his chest and turned into a circle of flickering purple light that spread from his feet to the surroundings. These 7 people all had a spiritual power of more than 15,000. With the 7 conjoined spiritual power, coupled with Sima Xian's berserk ability and the amplification effect of the conjoined spiritual enhancement pill, Sima Xian's total spiritual power was not far from the Earth Warrior's. The Earth Warrior waved his hammers and suddenly clashed in the air. At the point of collision, a yellow light shot straight towards Sima Xian's chest. After the conjoined spiritual power, the biggest flaw was that it wasn't flexible enough. Sima Xian didn't even think about dodging. He roared angrily, held the handle of the Vigor Pill of Light with both hands, and suddenly swung it upwards. There was another violent roar, and yellow light scattered in all directions. However, this time, the golden light of life sharing did not appear on Sima Xian's body. The action of stomping his right foot on the ground was not in vain. With the roar produced by this stomp, the spiritual stove of purple godly thunder received enough spiritual power to temporarily shake off the earth domain under his feet. His strength was reduced by the interference, and with the amplification from berserk. This allowed Sima Xian to resist the Earth Warrior's attack. "Have a taste of me too." The Vigor Pill of Light stuck to his chest, and the windows on both sides opened. Sima Xian roared angrily, and the spiritual stove of purple godly thunder was fully activated. A ball of purple light with an intense white light around it flew out, and directly bombarded the Earth Warrior. Lin Xian, who was at the back of the queue, subconsciously closed his eyes. His vision was already blurred. As the creator of the conjoined spiritual power enhancement pill, no one knew the effects of this pill better than him. After the conjoined spiritual power enhancement, Sima Xian received a 100,000 spiritual power boost. Using Berserk and the spiritual stove of purple godly thunder's full attack could only be described as terrifying. Once this battle ended, the backlash he would suffer would also be of the same level. Even Lin Xian didn't know if he could withstand it. Now, He could only pray that the red dragon armor was strong enough to protect his body. The enhanced version of the purple godly thunder cannon reached the Earth Warrior almost instantly. The Earth Warrior raised his hammers and brazenly blocked it. A violent explosion burst forth in the next moment. That's right, lightning had little effect on the Earth Warrior, but that referred to the power of lightning itself. Apart from the power of lightning, Sima Xian's spiritual stove of purple godly thunder had an even more terrifying explosive power. When facing the leopard demon god Azair, the ordinary version of the spiritual stove of purple godly thunder could blast Azair back. Although the Earth Warrior in front of him was stronger than Azair and had the support of a domain, the power of Sima Xian's enhanced purple godly thunder cannon was more than doubled. Boom! The terrifying explosion caused everyone in the Glimmer of Light monster hunters to lose their hearing in an instant. In the face of this terrifying explosion, the Earth Warrior was blasted back 4 steps. The hammers in his hands were already full of cracks from the explosion, and his entire body was surrounded by purple light. As he retreated, he looked like he was drunk. Although the powerful explosive power couldn't numb his Earth-type body, the power of the purple godly thunder cannon caused the soul fire of the Earth Warrior to be paralyzed. Sima Xian roared once again. The vigor ball of light in his hand spun 3 times above his head before he threw it out. His teammates behind him didn't see that Sima Xian's eyes had turned completely blood-red. The same blood-red light flowed along the chains and entered the vigorous light pill. Sacrifice, the knight's sacrifice skill. Long Haochen had used this skill more than once. Normally, priests wouldn't be able to use this skill. However, Sima Xian wasn't an ordinary priest. He was a commandment priest. He had begged Long Haochen to learn this sacrifice skill. Given the current situation, Sima Xian didn't think about what kind of effect this battle would bring him. The scene of Long Haochen dying at the hands of the demon emperor kept replaying in his mind. He was Long Haochen's retainer. However, he couldn't help Long Haochen at all back then. In terms of age, Sima Xian was a few years older than Long Haochen. However, ever since he joined the Glimmer of Light monster hunters, he had followed Long Haochen everywhere. In his heart, Long Haochen wasn't just his leader, but also his elder brother. As the soul and mainstay of the team, Long Haochen had saved the team from disaster countless times. Right now, Sima Xian only had one thought in mind, and that was to pave the way for his leader's resurrection at all costs. If Chen could do it, why couldn't he? Even with the spiritual enhancement skill, Sima Xian knew that his chances were slim. If Kai had been the one at the forefront of the spiritual enhancement skill, her chances of winning would definitely be much higher than his. However, he was still standing there and withstanding the power of the spiritual enhancement skill. If this went on, he would definitely lose. He couldn't defeat the Earth Warrior with the domain enhancement skill. Therefore, what he had to do was to unleash his power to an unprecedented level in the shortest time possible and smash the Earth Warrior into pieces. Chapter 227. After circling 3 times, the vigorous ball of light had turned completely amethyst in color. The terrifying electric snake even had a white-hot luster, as well as a hint of violent bloodthirst. The instant the vigorous ball of light with a diameter of 1 meter flew out, Sima Xian spat out a mouthful of blood. Amidst the clanging sounds, the crimson dragon armor on his body actually shattered inch by inch. It suddenly exploded, revealing his upper body that was full of scars. Rumble! The retreating Earth Warrior was directly hit by the vigorous ball of light that had gathered all of Sima Xian's strength and faith. The pair of giant hammers instantly shattered, and in the next moment, the vigorous ball of light directly imprinted itself on his chest. Amidst these 12 explosions, the Earth Warrior's body trembled violently. With each explosion, the cracks on his body would expand even more, and the cracks would become even finer. When the last explosion sounded, the Earth Warrior's body had completely collapsed. He didn't even have the time to worship his master. A yellow light shot out like lightning and fused with the eternal melody on Kai Er's chest. Sima, at the same time that the Earth Warrior collapsed, Sima Xian also fell to the ground in front of Kai like a collapsing mountain. The crisscrossing wounds on his upper body were already bleeding profusely. When the berserk state ended, he was already covered in blood. Two golden lights landed on Sima Xian's body at almost the same time. It was Duan Yi and Zhang Fangfang's holy light protection. After each of them released an instant spell, they immediately chanted an even more powerful healing spell. Han Yu came to Sima Xian's side and activated his spiritual cauldron of light protection to help everyone recover their spiritual power. Lin Xian took a step forward and held on to Sima Xian's fallen body. He stuffed a few pills into his mouth and checked his injuries. Leaning in Lin Xian's arms, Sima Xian's chest heaved up and down violently. Blood kept flowing out from his mouth, nose, and ears. However, there was a faint smile on his blood-covered face. I succeeded. Vice Commander, what you're going to face next might be a wind-type expert with a domain. You'll have a better chance of fighting against him. Just now, this brute force naturally left it to us old men to resurrect the leader. As Sima Xian finished his words, his body trembled violently again. Fortunately, Zhang Fangfang and Duan Yi had finished casting their advanced healing spells, which landed on him at the same time, healing the wounds all over his body. The wounds on the surface were easy to heal, but the internal injuries were not so easy to heal. Kai knelt on one knee beside Sima Xian. She pursed her lips and did not let her tears fall. She was now the leader of the whole team. She had to be strong. Sima Xian, thank you. Sima Xian's body trembled. He gradually calmed down under the healing spells, but his life force became weaker and weaker. Wang Yuanyuan grabbed Lin Xian's shoulder and asked anxiously, "How is it?" Lin Xian clenched his teeth and did not answer Wang Yuanyuan's question. Instead, he took out a few more pills and stuffed them into Sima Xian's mouth. At this time, Sima Xian had already fallen into a coma and could not take the initiative to swallow. Lin Xian did not even hesitate to put the pills into his mouth. Under the enhancement of Han Yu's light's blessing spiritual stove, Duan Yi and Zhang Fangfang used healing spells almost continuously. After a whole hour, Lin Xian's expression finally relaxed a little. "How is it?" Wang Yuanyuan asked anxiously. Lin Xian gasped for breath. "That Baldy's luck is pretty good. He managed to keep his life. Most of the backlash from his spiritual stove, frenzy, and the backlash from using the sacrifice skill were withstood by the epic red dragon armor. Otherwise, how could an epic piece of equipment be broken just like that? Even so, it almost cost him his life. His internal organs were all collapsing and failing before. My medicine and Brother Zhang's treatment forcibly saved his life. This guy is tough. His injuries have already stabilized. At least he won't die. Tui tui. Damn it, what a loss. Why did I kiss this guy's thick lips? What a loss. The tense atmosphere finally relaxed a little with Lin Xian's last sentence. Apart from Kai, everyone else had a smile on their faces. If it were any other time, they would probably have laughed out loud. But now, their hearts were heavy. This was only half of the fifth floor's test. They had already lost Chen, Ying-er and Sima Xian. The later tests would only be more difficult. Could they finally reach the seventh floor of the Tower of Eternity? Although Sima Xian defeated the Earth Warrior single-handedly, they all fell into a state of weakness after using the conjoined spirit-enhancing pills. Although the backlash from the conjoined spirit-enhancing pills was much weaker after Lin Xian's continuous improvement and the addition of many rare materials, it was still difficult for them to fight continuously. Even with the recovery from Light's blessing, it was impossible for them to improve to their best state. Although Kai was anxious, it was obviously impossible to continue moving forward. If they continued moving forward, they would still have to face powerful opponents with domains. With the current situation of the team, Only by using the conjoined spirit-enhancing pills would they have a chance. Everyone, rest here. We'll continue moving forward when we're no longer weak. After saying this, Kai carefully untied the long houchen on her back and laid it flat on the ground. Looking at his pale face without a trace of blood, Kai's body could not help but tremble. She raised her hand and gently caressed his face. She could not help but burst into tears again. Fool, fool. No matter what price I have to pay, I'll definitely save you. The rest time this time was obviously much longer than the previous time. With the efforts of Lin Xian, Zhang Fangfang, Han Yu, and Duan Yi, Sima Xian's physical condition finally stabilized. At least his life would not be in danger. At this time, the effect of the forest boa body forging pill was revealed. Compared with the professions of the same level, the powerful external spiritual power made them much stronger in resisting the side effects of the conjoined spirit-enhancing pills than ordinary professions. This could be clearly seen from the comparison of Duan Yi. About 16 hours later, Kai and the others had recovered one after another, but Duan Yi's state of weakness continued. In this state, he could not take the conjoined spirit-enhancing pills again. Therefore, even under his repeated requests, Kai decided to let him stay and take care of Sima Xian. Everyone, prepare the conjoined spirit-enhancing pills, Kai said in a deep voice. Lin Xian, do you still have spare conjoined spirit-enhancing pills? Lin Xian nodded and said, I still have a set here. Together with the ones in everyone's hands, we can still support 2 more battles. Kai slightly wrinkled her brows, slowly nodding her head. In less than a day, they had passed the 3rd and 4th floors of the Tower of Eternity, and they had also passed half of the 5th floor. However, this Tower of Eternity had a total of 7 floors. Just in this 5th floor, they already had to face a powerful holy guard with a domain. Then, what would the next 6th and 7th floor be like? At this time, everyone's expression was very serious. Although they did not want to think about it, they all faintly felt that with their current strength, it would be extremely difficult to eventually reach the 7th floor of the Tower of Eternity. It was just that no one was willing to say this fact, and they were even more unwilling to believe it. No matter what, they would give their best efforts to fight for time and opportunity for the resurrection of Long Houchen. This Tower of Eternity was also their only chance. Kai took a deep breath and said, passing one level is another. Next, we should face a wind magician with a domain. The attack speed of a wind magician must be extremely fast, and we are still not clear about his domain. Later, I will be the main attacker, and everyone will use soul enhancement to buff me. We must defeat him in the shortest time possible, and we can't let his attack power fully play out. As she said, she had already carried Long Houchen on her back again and tied him tightly with the chain. Kai Wang Yuan suddenly called her. Kai looked at her with some doubts. Wang Yuan stared at her face with a burning gaze. Let me do it. No. Kai almost refused her proposal without thinking. Previously, Sima Xian had already fought with his life, and even almost died in battle. As the temporary leader, how could she let other partners take risks? What's more, in the team, she was the strongest. Wang Yuan grabbed Kai's shoulders with both hands and stood in front of her. Kai, listen to me. We are a team, and reviving the leader is not something you can do alone. Inger and Sima have already done their best. Let me do the next one. I have confidence that I can succeed. The space element is the bane of the wind element. Furthermore, we all have our own trump cards. I have a certain level of confidence. Kai still shook her head. Yuan, I know you mean well, but I have more confidence. Wang Yuan suddenly said with some agitation, I know you have more confidence than me, but do you have confidence that you can defeat your opponent and escape unscathed? You don't. With your current cultivation, you'll have to use the 7 absolutes of the Death God if you want to defeat a magician with a domain. You've already used it once in the past 24 hours. If you use it again, you'll definitely suffer a strong backlash. Don't forget, we're not facing the final level yet. There's still the 6th and 7th level. It's true that you're the strongest, but you have to save your strength for the later levels. We can only rely on you to deal with stronger opponents. At a time like this, how can you lower your strength because of the backlash? I am not blindly impulsive, since I want to fight for you. I have a certain level of confidence. Leave it to me. Boss has done so much for us, now I just want to do my part in reviving him. Otherwise, if we fail in the end, I will regret it for the rest of my life. Kair's eyes unconsciously turned red. Yuanyuan, unbeknownst to her, Zhang Fangfang had already arrived at Wang Yuanyuan's side. Kair let her have it. I believe in Yuanyuan, you have this ability. In order to continue forward, we must make some choices. Save your strength for the more difficult stages later. Wang Yuanyuan smiled, opened her arms and hugged Kair tightly, then turned around and walked towards the depths of the 5th level of the Tower of Eternity. Zhang Fangfang followed closely behind, Kair Lin Xian, and Han Yu followed behind. At this point, there were only the 5 of them left in the entire team. In their palms, each of them held a conjoined spirit-increasing pill. Without a doubt, at least from the 5th level onwards, all the tests were prepared for the Type 9 powerhouses. They had reached this point with less than the Type 8 cultivation base, and had already done their best. From now on, every step forward would require a huge sacrifice. No matter where they fell, they would move forward with an indomitable will. For the chance of Long Houchen's resurrection, they would give it their all, even if it meant their lives. The light was slightly distorted. When they walked past the 50-meter dividing line, the surrounding air suddenly fluctuated violently. The wind of freedom rippled and soared in the hall. A faint green light flashed in all directions. Without hesitation, Wang Yuanyuan stuffed the conjoined spirit-increasing pill into her mouth, and the others did the same. The 5 of them instantly connected as one, forming a complete formation. However, after taking the conjoined spirit-increasing pill, Wang Yuanyuan did not take out her terrifying weapon, Bloody Storm, but only released the huge divine soul shield. Her pace was very stable, and the spiritual power injected by her Tao companions was rapidly combining with her own spiritual power. The surface of her skin had already begun to emit a faint silver light, and her pair of eyes had also become extraordinarily bright. A thick scent of blood emanated from the body of this powerful and stubborn female warrior. The air around Wang Yuanyuan began to fluctuate violently. With her body as the center, the surrounding air became illusory because of the spatial elemental fluctuations. They took the conjoined spirit-increasing pill in advance because the opponent they were about to face was likely to be the wind magician who could release magic the fastest. As it turned out, the Tower of Eternity really had a pattern to follow. As a green light pillar appeared in the distance, a thin and small green skeleton also appeared in everyone's line of sight. A faint cyan light blew, and the air suddenly emitted a gentle fluctuation of spiritual power. It was as if spring had arrived and the spring breeze was caressing one's face. However, it was also in this kind of feeling that green wind blades began to condense in every part of the 5th floor of the Tower of Eternity. In just an instant, there were tens of thousands of wind blades gradually condensing. Is this a domain or magic? For a moment, Kai and the others had the same question in their hearts. Only Wang Yuanyuan, who stood at the forefront, did not even look at the wind blades. Her gaze was on her divine soul shield. The huge shield was inlaid with a total of 4 pieces of empty silver crystals, emitting a strong spatial elemental fluctuation. Under the persistent gaze of Wang Yuanyuan, she took out a piece of empty silver crystal and quickly pressed it into the shield's 5th socket. The moment the empty silver crystal sank into the shield, suddenly, a strong silver light suddenly burst out from the shield. Even the spatial elemental spiritual power emitted by Wang Yuanyuan produced a violent fluctuation like a flame. The silver light quickly rose around her body, and Wang Yuanyuan's entire body seemed to gradually become distorted in this silver light. The divine soul shield was still silver, but the sockets of the 5 empty silver crystals all emitted an orange-red luster. In other words, after this divine soul shield completed the 5th socket, it had already begun to enter the ranks of the epic-grade equipment. Wang Yuanyuan did not stop, and she quickly pressed the 6th empty silver crystal into the 6th socket. Boom! The strong silver light was like an ignited barrel of gunpowder, or like a volcano erupting in an instant. At this time, the first wave of attack from the Wind Magician was launched. Thousands of wind blades with ear-piercing whistles shot from all directions towards the 5 members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters. Every wind blade emitted a metallic luster. It was as if they were real weapons, and the terrifying spiritual power attached to them seemed to be able to cut through everything. However, their attacks met with the silver light that was like a volcanic eruption. The surging silver spatial elemental spiritual power instantly turned into a huge silver dragon, suddenly enveloping Wang Yuanyuan and the others, and violently twisting it. After all the green light blades entered the silver light, they instantly melted like snow in a sea of fire. Only a layer of ripples splashed on the body of the silver dragon. In the distance, the green skeleton was slightly surprised. This powerful holy guard with the soul of a powerhouse did not have such an opponent in his memory. However, the attack just now was only the beginning. He pointed his green staff forward and shouted in a deep voice, "Wind, swift." It was just 2 simple words, but the entire space instantly turned green. The green light shone, and the second half of the 5th floor of the Tower of Eternity instantly turned into a huge green whirlpool. There were no gaps at all, and it started to spin at an astonishing speed. This was his domain, a wind-type domain filled with powerful attack power. Perhaps the explosive power of wind-type magic was not as good as that of fire-type magic, but in terms of speed and continuous attack power, it was not inferior to fire-type magic. As soon as the domain was launched, the silver whirlpool formed by the silver flames around Wang Yuanyuan began to tremble violently in the terrifying green light. One could clearly see that the layers of silver light were peeled off rapidly, and it seemed like it could collapse at any time. At this time, the 4 people behind Wang Yuanyuan were shocked. Although they had already guessed that the opponent they were going to face next would be very powerful, the strength displayed by this wind magician still surprised them. He also had a domain, but his attack power and the ability to mobilize the domain were clearly stronger than the Earth Warrior from before. Moreover, the Earth Warrior's domain was only for support, while this Wind Magician's was a direct attack. With his rank 9 cultivation base, he continuously activated this domain. Not long after, the power of this domain would reach the level of a forbidden spell. What could Yuan do to resist such a powerful attack? Because of the linked spirit enhancement, her skills were able to temporarily block the opponent. However, under the linked spiritual enhancement, she could not use her Space Gate spiritual stove. In this situation, no matter who it was, they could not think of any way to defeat the opponent. Moreover, they were behind Wang Yuanyuan, so they could not see her expression at this time. What was Wang Yuanyuan's expression at this time? Her eyes were focused and persistent, still not looking at the opponent in the distance, but focused on the divine giant soul shield in her hands. The silver whirlpool with the greatest power was rapidly being consumed, and in Wang Yuanyuan's left hand, there was also the last piece of empty silver crystal. Facing the last socket of the divine giant soul shield, she slowly pressed in. At this moment, a resolute look appeared in her eyes. If Sima Xian can do it, I can do it too. This was the only thought in her mind at this moment. Perhaps in the eyes of her companions, the epic-grade Sanguine Storm was her strongest weapon, but only she knew that in reality, her strongest weapon was still the Divine Giant Soul Shield. However, the Divine Giant Soul Shield's spiritual power requirements were too high, and the consumption of her body was incomparable to Sanguine Storm's. Thus, in previous battles, she had not activated the Divine Giant Soul Shield's stronger abilities. With her current cultivation base, She could at most support a short battle after the fifth empty silver crystal was embedded, and the sixth empty silver crystal was already her limit after the linked spiritual enhancement. The Divine Giant Soul Shield had a total of 7 sockets, but the 7th one was completely different from the previous 6. After completing the 6th empty silver crystal, the Divine Giant Soul Shield was still only a weapon, an epic-grade weapon. But the 7th empty silver crystal was, taking half a step to the left with her left foot, Wang Yuanyuan suddenly puffed out her chest, and a strong spatial spiritual power burst forth from her body, solidifying the silver whirlpool that was on the verge of collapse. For the first time, she looked at her opponent in the distance, at the Wind Mage. Boom! A strong silver light, like thousands of silver arrows, suddenly erupted from Wang Yuanyuan's body. The terrifying silver halo rose to its peak in an instant. Especially from her chest, a circle of intense silver light instantly expanded to the extreme. Spirit Burst. Wang Yuanyuan used the powerful enhancement skill of a warrior, Spirit Burst. In a sense, Spirit Burst was a kind of detonation of spiritual power in the body, instantly burning one's own spiritual power and producing a stronger combat power in a short time. It was somewhat similar to the Knight's Sacrifice skill. At the same time, Wang Yuanyuan slowly raised the Divine Giant Soul Shield, and with a cold and calm voice, with an incomparably strong smell of blood, she loudly chanted, "Great Divine Giant Soul Shield, please bestow upon your descendants the true power of the Divine Giant Soul Shield." As she said that, Wang Yuanyuan instantly retracted her left hand and fiercely hit her own chest. Suddenly, a large mouthful of blood crazily sprayed out, all of it sprayed on the Divine Giant Soul Shield. At the same time, the empty silver crystal in her left hand, with lightning speed, suddenly pressed into the last socket of the Divine Giant Soul Shield. Boom, boom, boom. When the empty silver crystal forcibly entered the last socket, 3 consecutive loud explosions sounded, almost at the same time. In the midst of the violent explosions, the spatial spiritual power emitted by Wang Yuanyuan also expanded 3 times. No, it should be said that it exploded 3 times. A shocking scene appeared. During the process of these 3 explosions, the Light of Dawn monster hunters only saw a piece of silver. However, when the explosions ended, they were shocked to find that the originally incomparably strong wind domain had actually collapsed in these 3 explosions. What kind of strength could achieve this? They had never thought that Wang Yuanyuan actually had such an ability. A huge figure had appeared in front of Wang Yuanyuan without anyone noticing. This figure was at least 10 meters tall, and its whole body was covered in silver armor. Outside the armor, what was shining was not a silver glow, but a blood-red smell of blood. This 10-meter-tall giant warrior was holding a shield in his left hand. It was an enlarged version of the Divine Giant Soul Shield. The huge shield was as tall as his body. In the midst of the loud explosion, the warrior suddenly took a step forward. The entire Tower of Eternity trembled violently with this step. At this time, Wang Yuanyuan's eyes had completely turned silver, and the Divine Giant Soul Shield that she had previously held up had disappeared. From Wang Yuanyuan's exposed skin, fine beads of blood were rapidly oozing out, and her whole body was also trembling violently. God's descent. This was clearly God's descent. However, unlike the God's descent that Kai'er and Long Haochen had performed, Wang Yuanyuan was not a God's favored. She used her own weapon to activate God's descent. Using the Titan God's bloodline as a guide and the Titan God's shield as a medium, she had actually completed this inconceivable summoning. As the terrifying Divine Giant Soul Shield took a step forward, the 10-meter-tall giant shield in his hand flew out horizontally. In an instant, there was only silver in the entire space. The ear-piercing tearing sound caused a river of stars to appear wherever the shield passed. The power of a god, this was the true power of a god. Kai'er asked herself, at least among the god's descent spells that she had used before, none of them could compare to the Divine Giant Soul Shield in front of her, not even Long Haochen was an exception. What did such a terrifying attack need to be paid? Kai Lin Xian, Han Yu, and Zhang Fangfang felt their hearts tighten at this moment. The Wind Magician was also completely shocked by this sudden scene. His hands moved in a crazy rhythm, and one by one, complex runes exploded in front of him. The shattered domain reformed, and in a flash, 9 consecutive small tornadoes had gathered in front of him. These 9 tornadoes were completely different from the previous domain. Although they were much smaller, they gave off a more terrifying feeling. Each small tornado emitted a green-gold luster, and their flying speed was very slow, but they were in the path that the Divine Giant Soul Shield had to pass through. After releasing these 9 small tornadoes, the soul fire in the cyan skeleton's eye sockets became a lot weaker. Obviously, the release of this spell was not easy. PFFF. The first tornado shattered upon contact, and countless cyan lights scattered in all directions. It was followed by the second, third, fourth, and fifth tornado. 5 consecutive tornadoes were unable to stop the Divine Giant Soul Shield's advance. However, when the Divine Giant Soul Shield destroyed the 6th tornado, it paused for a moment. This pause seemed to indicate that it was somewhat exhausted. Wang Yuanyuan looked up to the sky and roared. In the midst of her roar, she once again spat out a mouthful of blood mist. In an instant, a huge blood-colored shadow burst out from her body and fused with the Divine Giant Soul Shield in front of her. The Divine Giant Soul Shield waved its arms, and the Divine Giant Soul Shield that was flying horizontally suddenly stood up. The 7 empty silver crystals on the Divine Giant Soul Shield lit up with a resplendent light. Immediately after, a huge silver pillar of light had already rumbled out. That was a silver pillar with a diameter of 10 meters. The remaining 3 cyan tornadoes and the cyan skeleton were instantly swallowed by it. The violent roar caused the entire Tower of Eternity to violently tremble. Every time it trembled, there would be a faint and dense aura of death fluctuating. At the end of this attack, all the superimposed spiritual power produced by the body amplification was also completely drained. Wang Yuanyuan knelt on one knee on the ground. She was the same as Sima Xian from before. She had already become a bloody person. The difference was that the blood on her body was seeping out from her body, and there was not a trace of injury. The 10-meter-tall Divine Giant Soul Shield's figure collapsed. After a series of spirals, the shield stabbed in front of her with a bang. Ding! With an ear-piercing shattering sound, the 7 empty silver crystals on the Divine Giant Soul Shield shattered at the same time. The shield had also completely lost its luster and turned into a dark black color. Wang Yuanyuan knelt on one knee and did not move. The silver light in her eyes gradually faded, but her gaze was still fixed in front of her, watching the place where the huge silver pillar of light gradually disappeared. Finally, the silver light completely disappeared, but the cyan skeleton was still standing there. Around its body there was a layer of solid cyan light, but at this moment it also seemed to have solidified. It didn't kill him? Kai and the others looked at the cyan skeleton with some disbelief. However, in the next moment, crack, crack sounds rang out. The cyan light around the cyan skeleton's body slowly cracked like a broken eggshell. At the same time, the cyan skeleton's body also cracked. Holy Guard number 3, I submit to you. The cyan light flashed like a cyan arrow and shot towards Kai, quietly merging into the eternal melody. Kai could not be bothered to feel the warmth from the eternal melody. In a single step, she had already stepped in front of Wang Yuanyuan. What she saw was the thick murderous intent and stubborn conviction in Wang Yuanyuan's eyes gradually dissolving, and a touch of relief and gratification gradually revealed itself. However, her eyes had clearly turned into a grayish-white color. At this moment, a blood-red light suddenly shone from the side. Immediately after, within the blood-red light, a fist-sized rune flew in front of Kai and directly entered Wang Yuanyuan's forehead. Wang Yuanyuan's body trembled violently, and her originally gray pupils regained some luster. With a muffled groan, she fell to the ground. Kai hurriedly caught her body. On the other side, another person fell at the same time, Zhang Fangfang. Wang Yuanyuan had already fallen into a deep coma, but Zhang Fangfang was still conscious. A satisfied smile appeared on his face, and he murmured, "Now Yuan is mine, and can only be mine." I am very satisfied. You guys must succeed." After saying this, Zhang Fangfang closed his eyes and also fell into a coma. After he also fell into a coma, a strange scene appeared. Wang Yuanyuan and Zhang Fangfang's bodies both emitted a faint blood-red light, and on their foreheads, a blood-red rune began to shine. The two runes were not the same, but from the edge, it could be seen that if they were placed together, they would definitely be able to form a complete rune. However, what exactly did it represent? Han Yu supported Zhang Fangfang's body, and slowly laid him down next to Wang Yuanyuan. He knelt down on one knee, his right fist across his chest, and gave them the most solemn knight's salute. This was already the etiquette of paying respect to one's teacher. "Han Yu, hurry up and use healing magic. Why aren't you healing them?" Lin Xian, who was at the side, could not help but cry out anxiously. Han Yu silently shook his head. "It's useless. Healing magic will not have any effect on them. Brother Zhang is the most respected young knight I've ever met, aside from boss." Kai asked anxiously, "Will they be all right?" Han Yu shook his head. "Their lives are not in danger," but Lin Xian was also anxious. "Can you not finish your sentence? What's going on with them?" Han Yu took a deep breath. His eyes filled with emotions. "If I'm not wrong, the power that Yuan used just now was completely beyond what she could bear. She used her own bloodline and the divine soul shield to trigger God's descent. And after launching 2 attacks, she has already exhausted her life force. She used spirit explosion to burn her own life force to raise the aura of her bloodline to its strongest level. Only then was she able to complete this summoning. So, after the battle, Yuan's life also came to an end." "Didn't you say that their lives are not in danger?" Kai asked anxiously. Han Yu nodded. "Brother Zhang is really worthy of respect. Although I don't know this magic, I've seen it in ancient books. What he used should be a secret life-extending magic passed down from ancient times, transferring one's life force to another, allowing the dying person to share the caster's life force, thus prolonging their life. Looking at Brother Zhang's appearance and the brilliance of the runes, he should have directly given half of his life force to Yuan. In other words, if he could have lived to 100, then he and Yuan can now live to 50. Hearing Han Yu's words, Kai and Lin Xian couldn't help but gasp. No matter how cold Kai-er's personality was, she couldn't help but cry at this moment. "Yuan, why are you doing this? If Long Haochen knew that you guys have sacrificed so much for him, I'm afraid he would rather not choose to resurrect." Kai-er's body trembled violently. Step by step, 3 of her companions had fallen into a crisis of near death, and Zhang Fangfang had also shared half of his life force. In order to resurrect Long Haochen, they had sacrificed too much. Chapter 228. Han Yu said in a low voice, "Kai, don't say that. Yuan was right. Reviving the leader isn't something you can do alone. Since the establishment of monster hunters, how much has the leader sacrificed for us? Although we rarely talk about it, we all remember it deeply in our hearts. Without the leader, perhaps we would have been wiped out long ago. How could we have come this far? How could we have the glory of being a titled monster hunters? It was worth it to follow the leader to conquer the demons. Now that the leader has died in battle, as long as he can be revived, even if we have to sacrifice our lives, it is worth it. This is the common thought of us all. Without the leader, the light of dawn has lost its soul. We need him to come back to life and continue to lead us to create more glory, to lead us to defeat the demons." Even the Demon Emperor, Moon Demon, and Star Demon believe that the existence of the leader is a threat to the survival of the demons. The leader's life is more important than all of us combined. Reviving the leader is to bring the dawn of victory to the Alliance. No matter the price, it is worth it. Lin Xian nodded and said, Han Yu is right. As long as the leader can be revived, I am willing to pay any price. We have finally passed the test of the 5th floor. However, what we have to face next will only be more difficult. Our opponents will be stronger, and we only have 3 people left. Kai if necessary, Han Yu and I do something, don't stop us. Kai looked at Lin Xian and Han Yu standing in front of her. Their eyes were filled with determination and persistence, which couldn't be moved by words. Since they had already come here, they had to move forward. Otherwise, their previous efforts would have been in vain. She untied Long Houchen's body and carefully placed it on the ground. Kai didn't try to persuade Lin Xian and Han Yu anymore. At this point, she had to be strong. She was the acting leader after Long Houchen, so she had to bear more responsibilities. Han Yu and Lin Xian sat opposite Kai. Kai touched the warm eternal melody on her chest and said, "The Tower of Eternity has a total of 7 floors. When we first came here, Houchen activated the inheritance of the holy law of necromancy, eternal sleep calamity Electrolux. Electrolux's message mentioned that his inheritance was on the 7th floor of the Tower of Eternity. And before meeting him, he had to go through enough tests. 10 of the 12 holy guards had already appeared. Only the last 2 were left, and they would undoubtedly appear in the next test. If there were 2 of them on each floor, then it was very likely that they would all appear on the 6th floor. In other words, the 6th floor's test might very well be the last one we have to face." Han Yu nodded and said, "It's very likely. There were already Type 9 powerhouses with domains in the 5th level. If the 6th floor goes one step further, then it would be somewhat unreasonable for there to be a test on the 7th floor. If they were really that strong, why would they still need his inheritance?" Lin Xian said, "But what would the 6th floor's test be? According to the previous pattern, we should meet a dark magician and a light warrior. Could it be that 2 Type 9 powerhouses with domains will appear at the same time?" Just as he said this, the 3 of them revealed looks of shock in their eyes. One must know, among the 6 main elements, light and darkness were originally existences that were above water, fire, earth and wind, the 4 elements of nature. Hence, those who possessed light and darkness were also stronger than those who possessed the 4 elements of nature. Even if it was just one of them, it would already be an extremely difficult test for them. Not to mention 2 of them appearing at the same time. Han Yu frowned and said, "They shouldn't appear at the same time. If that's the case, it would be too difficult to deal with." Opposite him, Kai shook her head and said, "I hope they appear at the same time." "Why?" Han Yu and Lin Xian asked almost at the same time. Kai said, "Because this is the only way the 6th floor could be the final test. The tests of the Tower of Eternity will gradually become more difficult, and no matter what the test is, as the final stage, it will definitely be more difficult than the previous ones. When we reach the 6th floor, if the test we encounter is only the light and darkness powerhouses appearing at the same time, then the difficulty is not too different from before, at least there is no qualitative change. Only when both of them appear at the same time, this difficulty is enough to show the difficulty of the Tower of Eternity's final test. Although this kind of test is very difficult for us to pass, it's still better than an unknown test." Han Yu murmured, "Actually, for light and darkness to appear at the same time, it's not necessarily a bad thing." "Still not a bad thing? Those are 2 powerhouses with domains," Lin Xian said in confusion. Han Yu said, "But, don't forget, among the 6 major elemental attributes, the conflict between light and darkness is also the most intense. Let me ask you, how do light and darkness work together? Let's not talk about other things, let's talk about domains. Domain abilities are all area of effect, that's why they are called domains. If the light and darkness domains are together, there will be a conflict in itself. How can they work together? Maybe they will appear at the same time, but they may not use their domains. In this case, it will be relatively easier for us to deal with them. Kai didn't say anything, she was thinking hard. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy. However, she couldn't guess what the 6 floors test would be. Han Yu looked at Kai and said, "How about I go up and try first?" Kai hurriedly said, "No. No matter what the 6 floors test is, the examinees are too strong. Moreover, without enough power, they definitely can't use their full strength. You won't be able to detect anything at all. We only have one chance, and we have to be as strong as a tiger in one go to have a chance of passing. Let's hurry up and recover our strength. This time, none of you fight with me, only I have a chance of passing." There was no point in guessing now. Only when they really faced it would they be able to understand the difficulty of this last floor. The 3 of them sat cross-legged and quickly entered into meditation, recovering their respective spiritual power. Although they used the conjoined spirit-increasing pill again and again after recovering their strength, the overdraft on their bodies was still very serious. The upcoming 6 floors test was very likely to be the final one. This time, Kai didn't dare to be anxious. They had to fully recover their cultivation. In the sky, the light shadow of the Grim Reaper still existed. He stood there silently, the gray light emitted from his body faintly discernible, as if he was breathing, and with every fluctuation of his aura, the aura in the Tower of Eternity seemed to have a slight change. This time, Kai was completely immersed in the process of cultivation. After the previous few trials, she had recovered her memory, and her soul and strength had gradually completed the process of integration. At the same time, after a few tough battles, it had also further stimulated her potential, and her strength had increased a lot. When she opened her eyes again, even she didn't know how much time had passed. Lin Xian and Han Yu had already opened their eyes. At the same time, all the members of the Light of Dawn were beside her. Chen Ying'er leaned on Yang Wenjiao's arms, and Duan Yi supported Sima Xian to sit on the other side. The pale Wang Yuanyuan and Zhang Fangfang had also woken up. On the surface, although nothing could be seen. However, their auras were clearly much weaker than before. There was even no fluctuation of spiritual power from their bodies. "You're all here." Looking at her companions in front of her, Kai couldn't help but purse her red lips. "Kai, we can definitely do it. We're going to climb to the 6th floor with you. We're cheering for you." Chen Ying'er's voice was still very weak, but her tone was very firm. The others nodded in the same way. Perhaps they were already unable to do anything for Kai to continue to move forward. However, they were willing to use their encouragement to help Kai complete the next battle. Kai slowly stood up and looked at Long Haochen, who was lying calmly beside her. She didn't say any more words of gratitude, because no words could express the gratitude in her heart. "It's good to have companions like you. Then let's climb to the 6th floor together." As she spoke, she picked up Long Haochen from the ground. This time, she didn't use the chain to bind him to her body. She turned around and walked toward the light pillar that had already appeared in front of her. The Grim Reaper's shadow in the sky also moved forward. When Kai disappeared in the light pillar, it also turned into a stream of light, integrated into the light pillar, and disappeared together. The members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters, supported by each other, firmly walked toward the light pillar. Rays of teleportation light lit up, taking them to the higher floor of the Tower of Eternity. The 6th floor of the Tower of Eternity. When everyone arrived here through teleportation, their eyes all focused at the same time. This floor was different from the previous 5 floors. With the center as the dividing line, the entire 6th floor of the Tower of Eternity was like 2 completely different worlds. On the left side there was darkness, and on the right side there was golden light. Light and darkness were clearly divided into 2 sides. In the center there was a strange white energy that separated them. Kai carefully put Long Haochen on the ground and turned to look at her companions. "Please take care of him. Han Yu, Lin Xian, I need to borrow your strength. Carrying Long Houchen, it was difficult for her to exert her full strength. Okay. Lin Xian and Han Yu took a step forward at the same time and were about to swallow the conjoined spirit enhancement pill. Their movements were stopped by Kai. Not with the conjoined spirit enhancement pill. I want to use the spiritual stove of samsara to borrow your strength. For a period of time, you will lose all your spiritual power. It will take at least 3 months for you to recover. Later, when I absorb your spiritual power, you have to be completely relaxed to complete it. Both of them were slightly stunned. Kai had such a trick? The others watched silently from behind, watching Kai and watching Long Houchen. The situation of the 6th floor had clearly told them that what they were about to face was inevitably the simultaneous appearance of light and darkness. Would Kai really be able to pass this trial? No one knew if Kai could succeed, and they could only pray silently in their hearts. Kai, there's still us. We can also lend our spiritual power to you. Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi stood up at almost the same time. Other than Han Yu and Lin Xian, only the 2 of them still had spiritual power. Kai didn't stand on ceremony and nodded. Okay. The 4 of them stood in a row in front of Kai. Kai raised the Grim Reaper scythe in her hand slowly, and the Grim Reaper shadow above her head slightly lowered. The cold murderous aura permeated the air, but this murderous aura didn't seem to be aggressive at all. Instead, it was a special state of energy fluctuation. The Tower of Eternity had a very strong aura of death, but at this moment, the aura of death seemed to have suddenly disappeared. The Grim Reaper shadow also became brighter and brighter. Kai's chest area lit up, but it wasn't the brilliance of the eternal melody. It was a ball of gray light with a gray halo, quietly appearing on her chest area like a vortex. The Grim Reaper scythe pointed forward, and the first to fall on Han Yu's body. The sharp blade was directly against Han Yu's chest area. Suddenly, Han Yu shivered, and he only felt that his body had fallen into an ice cellar. That ice-cold aura seemed to be filled with a supreme dignity. The spiritual power in his body, as if it had found an outlet, gushed out wildly. Along the Grim Reaper scythe, it turned into a circle of white halo and spread towards Kai. Following Kai's instructions, Han Yu didn't try to stop her. He completely relaxed his body, allowing Kai to absorb it. In just a moment, his tens of thousands of spiritual power had been sucked dry. However, the absorption didn't end. Han Yu directly opened his light blessing spiritual stove and sat there cross-legged. He said in a deep voice, Kai, you absorb the others first. With the effect of my spiritual stove, you should be able to absorb more. Kai nodded silently, and the Grim Reaper scythe flashed, and the second to fall on Lin Xian's body. At this time, the light-blessing spiritual stove had enveloped the bodies of Lin Xian, Duan Yi and Yang Wenjiao, allowing their spiritual power to recover at a high speed. The Grim Reaper scythe was full of majesty and coldness, constantly flashing, wandering around the 4 of them, absorbing every drop of their spiritual power. At first, the 4 of them could still maintain their standing posture, but as a large amount of spiritual power disappeared, the feeling of weakness forced them to sit down. Time ticked by, and the absorption lasted for the time it took to finish a meal. And the spiritual power Kai obtained from the 4 of them was more than 100,000. This was the effect of the light-blessing spiritual stove. Without this spiritual stove, it would be quite good for Kai to be able to absorb 60,000 spiritual power from them. The injection of 100,000 spiritual power caused Kai's body to be filled with a layer of strong spiritual power. A faint gray airflow slightly fluctuated around her body. The cold majesty that the 4 people who had been absorbed by her before could be felt by everyone now. The Grim Reaper's shadow in the sky also became clearer. Apart from the face that was still illusory, even every line on the gray armor on his body could be clearly seen at this time. Holding the Grim Reaper scythe in her hand, Kai slowly bowed to her companions, and the depths of her eyes were filled with determination. The demon hunters of the bright glimmer of dawn demon hunt squad felt their hearts sink. The determination in Kai's eyes was filled with an indescribable silence. She had already made up her mind to fight to the death. However, at this time, none of them stopped Kai. They also knew that no one could stop her now. Taking a deep breath, the scythe of the god of death in Kai's hand fell on the ground. Immediately, the gray light around her body was the same as the gray light in her chest, fluctuating in a whirlpool, and one gray light arm after another quietly revolved around her body. Kai's feet had quietly left the ground. If one had to describe the feeling she gave at this time, the word nothingness was very suitable. Even the companions behind her felt that she was a little unreal at this time. Layers of spiritual power continuously surged out of Kai's body. The moment she picked up the Grim Reaper scythe again, a monstrous murderous intent erupted. One could clearly see a tyrannical gray light rushing forward like a waterfall. The path it chose to attack was impressively the layer of white barrier between light and darkness. Just as Kai made her move, in the two diametrically opposite worlds of gold and black, two light shadows appeared at the same time. At this moment, the people from the light of dawn only felt as if the sun and the moon appeared at the same time on the 6th floor of the Tower of Eternity. That's right, it was this feeling. The sun representing the day and the moon representing the night appeared at the same time. They were two skeletons that looked exactly the same. The golden skeleton was covered in armor, while the black skeleton was covered in a magic robe. As Kai expected, the last two holy guards appeared at the same time. Moreover, judging from the situation on the 6th floor, with the white barrier in the center, their respective domains would not interfere with each other. Boom! The gray tangible murderous intent suddenly hit the thin cross-section of the white barrier. The space on the 6th floor of the Tower of Eternity swayed slightly. The white barrier looked thin, but in fact it was extremely tough. Such a strong and sharp tangible murderous intent could not cause any damage to it at all. It's the chaos attribute. And the space attribute. Chen Ning-er and Wang Yuanyuan spoke almost at the same time. Their eyesight had become more and more powerful with the growth of their strength. When the white light swayed just now, they felt the familiar fluctuation of the attribute. The combination of chaos and space formed this layer of barrier. The two skeletons moved at the same time. Behind the light warrior, a pair of huge golden spiritual wings suddenly appeared. His body turned into a stream of light, and went straight to Kai and launched an attack. This skill was somewhat similar to Long Houchen's light speed flash, but the speed was even faster. At the moment when he moved, the place where he was previously standing suddenly shone with a blazing sun-like brilliance. A strong fluctuation of light elements suddenly erupted in a sticky manner. The light shone brightly. On the other side, the dark mage raised his staff, and behind him, a dark purple crescent moon appeared. The same viscous darkness attribute burst forth. It was impossible for light and darkness to truly merge. However, the moment these two powerhouses launched their attacks at the same time, Kai's body suddenly froze at the center of light and darkness. In other words, the chaos and space barrier that separated the two major attributes was at the center of her body. At this moment, darkness was on her left, and light was on her right. Her body was fixed, and she had to face the attacks of the two powerhouses at the same time. That's right, light and darkness could not truly merge. However, under this ingenious design, Kai was restricted to the center of the 6th floor of the Tower of Eternity. She had to bear the impact of the light and darkness domains and powerful skills at the same time. However, she could only move in a straight line in the center. The restriction of the light and darkness domains had forced her into a desperate situation the moment they launched their attacks. The expressions of everyone from the Light of Dawn monster hunters had changed. Compared to the previous 5 floors, the difficulty of the 6th floor's assessment was too much. Originally, they thought that the fifth floor's assessment was too difficult, and they were facing powerhouses with domains. However, on this floor, not only did Kai face two powerhouses, but she also had to withstand the attacks of two completely opposite attributes at the same time. The repulsive force of light and darkness was terrifying. Once these two attributes were used on her body at the same time, the repulsive force of the attributes was enough to tear her body into pieces. Facing such a desperate situation, Kai did not panic at all. Holding the Grim Reaper scythe in her right hand, she appeared very calm. Taking a step forward, her body also moved, and she advanced in a straight line. At this moment, Kai-Er's speed suddenly reached an indescribably terrifying level. She even surpassed the Light Warrior, who already had domains. Almost in a flash, she crossed paths with the Light Warrior. She even passed by the Dark Mage, but she did not launch an attack. What skill was this? All she could see was a gray figure. Even a ninth-grade assassin could not reach such speed. Just as Kai-Er's body rushed forward, the Grim Reaper's silhouette that had been floating in the air all along finally fell down, chasing after her. Like an afterimage, it shrunk unceasingly until it finally merged with Kai-Er's body. God's descent? The same term appeared in the minds of everyone from the Light of Dawn monster hunters. However, they did not understand what this God's descent that Kai-Er performed was. As early as when they were fighting on the third floor, the Grim Reaper shadow had appeared and joined the battle for a short period of time. However, it had always existed, but it had never been used by Kai-Er again. How could a God's descent take so long to prepare and maintain for such a long time? Gray, endless gray. Kai-Er's entire body had already sunk into gray. The instant the Grim Reaper shadow merged with her body seemed to have become even more slender. The spiritual wings on her back retracted, and a layer of gray light flowed across her body like a wave of water. When Kai-Er slowly turned around in the distance, the color of her pupils changed. It wasn't black, nor was it gray, but rather a deep white. White usually gave people a feeling of cleanliness, but the white in Kai-Er's eyes seemed to have endless magic. The moment she turned around, the Dark Mage and the Light Warrior's movements became sluggish. They did not even launch an attack immediately. A layer of gray light spread from Kai-Er's body. A strange scene appeared. The central dividing line formed by chaos and space could not exist within the gray light. At this moment, Kai-Er was like a huge gemstone embedded in the central boundary. This feeling could no longer be described as strange. The murderous aura on her body seemed to have disappeared. There was only an ice-cold silence, but this silence was not the aura of death. Her long dress fluttered even though there was no wind. The white light in Kai-Er's eyes became more and more intense. Grim Reaper's 7 absolutes, death of death. Kai-Er moved. The instant the Grim Reaper scythe left her hand, it had turned completely white. Her attack was not aimed at any of the opponents on either side. Instead, it was aimed at the center of the spirit formation. Yes, she wanted to break this boundary. Only then would she have a chance. Otherwise, she would be defeated by the attacks of the light and darkness domains. The Dark Mage pointed his staff forward, and a pitch-black light shot out. At the same time, the crescent moon behind him floated up, and a deep purple light chased after the black light. The Light Warrior did not launch another attack. He pointed his heavy sword to the sky, and the scorching sun emitted an incomparably bright golden light. The golden light flashed, and like the purple moonlight, it shone towards Kai. Rip, an ear-piercing sound was heard. The white barrier was shattered. The power of darkness and light instantly gathered in the center. However, the instant the two opposing powers collided, the halos of the purple moon and the golden sun also collided in front of Kai. The black light that the Dark Mage released was cut apart by Kai-Er's Grim Reaper scythe. But it also caused her movements to slow down. The next moment, the purple moon and the golden sun collided. A strange scene appeared. When the two domains collided, the entire space seemed to freeze. The light and darkness that were supposed to collide violently after losing their central boundary stopped at their respective positions at this moment. There was no expected collision. As for the purple moon and the golden sun, they actually overlapped in this strange scene. The purple-black and golden-yellow intertwined, forming a light ball that looked like a yin and yang fish, and was only the size of a human head. Seeing this, everyone from the bright glimmer of dawn demon hunt squad couldn't help but shiver. This was the fusion of light and darkness, a dual-element fusion spell. They had seen fusion spells before, but they had never thought of a pure fusion of light and darkness. Qin Ingers' elemental cage could allow the 6 elements to temporarily fuse together, erupting with a formidable power. However, her fusion was a shortcut. For example, water and fire, light and darkness would definitely be separated by other elements and could not come into contact with each other. Otherwise, she would not be able to control them at all. But at this moment, what appeared in front of them? The magic produced by the fusion of light and darkness, and it was the fusion of the light domain and the dark domain. Not to mention seeing it before, even in the ancient books of mankind, there were no records of such a thing. Just how terrifying would the fusion of light and darkness be able to unleash such terrifying power? Would Kyr be able to block it? Even if the Demon Emperor were here, his expression would probably change. The difficulty of the 6th level test was far beyond their expectations. The 2 holy guards could even complete such a fusion. How could they win? Yes, the moment the ball of light appeared, the light and darkness attributes on both sides seemed to have found a source and frantically gathered towards the ball of light. The souls of the strong in the eyes of the 2 skeletons were also beating violently. The entire Tower of Eternity was trembling violently in this fusion. Once such a fusion exploded, they did not even know if the Tower of Eternity could withstand it. This was the fusion of 2 rank 9 domains. And it was an explosive fusion. And at this moment, Kyr launched her second attack. The white light quietly converged, and her entire body seemed to become crystal clear, as if she was carved out of a pure white jade. The Grim Reaper scythe pointed forward, and Kyr's body quietly glided towards the ball of light and darkness. A strange white light spread out from the Grim Reaper scythe. It looked like a silk thread, and it lightly landed on the ball of light. Then, a strange scene appeared. The white thread of light slowly cut into the ball of light formed by darkness and light. It easily stripped away all the spiritual power inside. The fusion of light and darkness on both sides stopped. The soul flames in the eyes of the light warrior and dark mage pulsed violently, and they launched another attack at the same time. The fusion of domains was originally their most powerful attack. If not for the purifying power of Kyr's Death of Death, which made them feel fear from the bottom of their hearts, as well as breaking the barrier between light and darkness, they wouldn't have acted so easily. But Kyr's second attack shocked them once again. That seemingly fine white light was even more frightening than the previous death's demise. That was a kind of purifying power that couldn't be resisted by any attribute. How could it be easy to fuse light and darkness? There had to be a special balance point. There had to be a delicate balance between the two, neither conflicting with each other, nor devouring each other. This was extremely difficult to grasp, and it could only be achieved by elements that had reached the solid state. But under the stripping of the white light thread, how could this balance be maintained? The dual-colored ball of light formed by gold and purplish-black instantly produced extremely unstable fluctuations. It was about to explode. The 2 skeleton warriors guarding this stage were undoubtedly the leaders of the 12 Holy Guards, Holy Guard number 1 and Holy Guard number 2. As the most powerful existence among all the Holy Guards, Holy Law of Necromancy, and Sleeping Calamity Electrolux used to be the right-hand man. Their control over light and darkness had already reached an extreme. Seeing that the ball of light was about to explode, the 2 powerhouses simultaneously made a similar action. The Holy Guard number 1's heavy sword coiled around his right shoulder in a circle. The same action was done by the Holy Guard number 2's Dark Mage, and the circle was his magic staff. Being stripped by the white light, the ball of light that was about to explode instantly collapsed. The light and dark elements retreated to both sides at the same time, and quickly merged with the light warrior and dark mage. Even the gold and black elements in the air merged with them. Seeing this, Lin Xian, who was also a mage, could not help but tremble. This was not something that could be done with 200,000 spiritual power points. Magic could be released and released at will, and the magical elements that were released were forcibly withdrawn when they were about to explode. What kind of control did this require? Not only did the two holy guards have super strong control over magical elements, but they also had control over their domains to the extent that they could move their arms and fingers. This kind of power was too terrifying. Their spiritual power points were probably close to 300,000. Even if their equipment was slightly inferior, they could still be comparable to the top 36 demon gods who had activated their demon god transformation. Yet, Kair was facing these two powerhouses alone. What kind of pressure was this? Even if Long Houchen was resurrected, he would not be able to win. However, the process just now also confirmed some of Lin Xian's thoughts. That was, Holy Guard number 1 and Holy Guard no. 2 did not want their spiritual power to collide. Once their fusion was destroyed, light and darkness would corrode each other. Then, their abilities would definitely be greatly affected. However, Lin Xian was curious about one thing. One was light while the other was dark. How could they cooperate so well? Experts of the light and darkness attributes should naturally repel each other. The gold and black retreated in two different directions at the same time, and a strange scene played out on the 6th floor of the Tower of Eternity. However, it was obviously not easy for the two holy guards to withdraw their respective domains in this way. They were suffering from the backlash caused by the reversal of the domains. Two groans were heard almost at the same time. They both took a step back. The spiritual power waves around their bodies were obviously a little chaotic. Not only did Kair not suffer a loss when facing two powerhouses who could use the fusion of light and darkness, she actually had the upper hand. If it was not for the fact that it was right in front of them, who would dare to believe it? However, Kair had already closed her eyes, and the light in her eyes had also disappeared with the previous attack. Death's 7 ultimate, 2nd ultimate, Death's purification. The white that appeared around Kair, including the white in her eyes, all originated from the Death's purification power. When they first entered the 3rd floor, Kair had already used God's descent, and the Death's shadow was actually the Death's descent. If it was another place, with Kair's current cultivation base, she could at most maintain the Death's descent for about 5 minutes. However, it was different in the Tower of Eternity. As early as the first time she followed Long Houchen to the Tower of Eternity, Kair already had an epiphany here. This epiphany originated from the Tower of Eternity's Death Aura. The Tower of Eternity was a powerful artifact of the holy law of necromancy, Calamity Necromancer Electrolux. It absorbed souls to enhance its own power. How strong was the death aura it was filled with? What was the death god? The death god was the god in charge of death. He didn't bring death, but purified it. By purifying the death aura, he could turn it into the purest power for his own use. This was the power of the death god.